Meeting, please come to order. Barbara, please call the roll.
Yes, we have Commissioners Berard, Fleming, Funderburk, and Levine. Noonan are all present.
This proceeding is broadcast on Channel 35. The exact broadcast times can be found by contacting Channel 35. Opening remarks by me, I have none. Report briefing by the General Manager.
There is none.
There is none. Comments from commissioners on agendized items and requests from commissioners relating to departmental operations. I see Commissioner Noonan moving her microphone closer, so I think that's a clue.
Yeah, I just want to give kudos and accolades to you, Mr. Adams, as well as General Manager Edwards. There was a very, very productive discussion that was held with different utility managers throughout the nation, as well as one from Canada. And I was able to attend a great portion of it, but it was talking about the use of PVC and HDPE piping and pros and cons that these different communities have experienced. And since I've served on this board, I've been a proponent of at least understanding and utilizing that technology when appropriate. So I really appreciate you holding that event, and I'm looking forward to the summary and the results that manifest from that.
Thank you. And I think we'll have, I think in July, we're going to have the Water Research Foundation here to present the results of their study. So thank you.
I appreciate you being forward thinking.
Other comments from commissioners? Barbara, I understand we have 2 public comment cards.
Yes, the first speaker is Linda Romney.
Good morning. As you know, we still have a class action lawsuit involving the Department of Water and Power concerning the billing system. And unfortunately, it continues. Even though I personally have written 51 letters requesting correction of the bill, I have not received a response to my written requests, including those made under California Records Act requests, and the bills have not been paid. However, the water and electric has been turned off for 8 months. There is a definite problem concerning the fact that between landlord and tenant, if there is money that is owed by the landlord or by the tenant, the utilities will not be transferred into their name. We are not responsible, nor should the DWP give personal information for your landlord and your ratepayer to the tenants and require that those monies be paid for parties who are not responsible for them. When the tenants come to the Valley office or whatever office with the lease in their hand, the utility should immediately, if they are qualified via their credit, for the services to be turned on. I have now over $1 million worth of damages plus loss of rent. And as I'm stating, I have again requested that the utilities be immediately turned on while the correction of the bill be instigated, and I have been refused. Something needs to be done. There isn't any customer service. No customer service whatsoever, and no individual that is in charge of answering the correspondence by your ratepayers. You now have, at least I'm seeing on the last page, 9 additional litigations. Believe me, you're going to have much more if this is not corrected. Thank you for your courtesy.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Heidi Bass.
Good morning, Mr. President. This is a birthday gram from your fellow board members and Marcy Edwards.
So much for the secret.
And the DWP Coreliers. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mel. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Well, you guys are great, and whoever dreamed this up, I want to talk to privately. Right.
Talk to Mom.
Well, on that note, comments from ratepayer advocate.
I don't know I can top that, really.
It's not easy.
We have no prepared comments on any particular agenda item, but as always, are open to questions and concerns as they arise in your discussion.
Thank you. And we now have a new agenda item, discussion with neighborhood council representatives on any neighborhood council resolution or community impact statement filed with the city clerk which relate to any agenda item listed or being considered on this agenda for the Water and Power Board. Barbara, do you wish to comment on this?
Yes, no community impact statements or formal positions were filed by any neighborhood councils on the items on today's agenda.
So I take it under this new process, if items are filed, then they file by neighborhood council representatives, then they'll fall under this item 6 on the agenda.
Mr. President, that would be correct.
Thank you, council. I was looking to Barbara for legal advice, which she provides quite
She is very
effectively.
capable.
Right. I move to defer approval of the minutes of May 17th. Is there a second?
Second.
The reason is that Commissioner Barad has some extensive changes, and I think it'll be more efficient if she reviews them with staff, and then we can see the corrected minutes at our next meeting.
Thank you.
Those in favor of deferring?
Aye.
It's deferred. Are there any items on the consent calendar that commissioners wish to remove from the consent calendar?
Item 11.
Commissioner Fleming, item 11. Others?
11 squared, same thing.
I have to recuse myself, Mr. President.
So we'll have to take it off consent so you can recuse and...
Yeah, and then,
Okay.
and then 19, 20, 21, and 22.
Just
Was that 21 and 22?
19, 20, 21, and 22.
Okay.
...19 through 22, okay. So, is there a motion to approve items 9, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18?
So moved.
Second, those in favor?
Aye.
Those items are approved. And we move to item 11.
What about item 8?
Oh, I'm sorry, we move to item 8. Thank you, Barbara.
Okay, we have a speaker card for item 8.
Okay, we have a speaker card for item 8. Please call the speaker.
The speaker is Jesse Molina.
Good morning, Commissioners. Happy birthday, Commissioner. My name is Jesse Molina. I'm with the law firm of Hill, Fair, and Burrow, and I represent the legal interests of Cloud Valve Company with respect to this item. I'm also a resident of the City of Los Angeles, Council District 12. Cloud Valve has submitted a protest to the proposed award. Cloud Valve was initially deemed to be the lowest bidder. Its bid was lowered by $448,000, and there were some issues that followed with respect to the testing of the sample hydra assembly submitted by Cloud. The grounds stated for Cloud's present request that it be allowed to resubmit a hydra assembly for retesting are stated in the protest letter. But briefly, to cover those. One, there was an issue with respect to the delivery of the sample hydra. It's undisputed that the sample hydra was dropped by the department's employees when it was being unloaded. We don't know if it was damaged. We have requested a right to inspect that sample hydra, and it's been refused. Two, there are serious concerns and issues with respect to whether or not the testing specifications and testing procedure as provided in the intent for bid were followed. There's a video that evidences that those procedures were not followed. Okay? One, there was a test schematic that was subsequently provided in response to a Public Records Request Act. In that schematic, it provides that the testing be done, a pressure testing on the hydro be done at 375 psi. The specifications do not require that. They require 300. The testing video also shows that during the testing, the two gauges that were used to measure the pressure had different readings. If you watch the video closely, you'll hear different readings being provided by the two employees that are administering the testing. The video evidences a variance of anywhere between 40 to 50 psi's. Next, the specifications also do not require that certain labeling be on the trim Titan bell. That was one of the reasons that was identified in the records produced by the department, although it wasn't initially identified as the reason in its initial correspondence informing CLOW that its valve did not pass testing. Another reason is that the IFPs themselves contemplate test failures and re-inspections. And if you look at Article 6D of Part F of Division 2 of the specifications in the IFB, it specifically provides for testing so long as CLOW pays for the cost of the testing.
Could you wrap up your remarks, please?
Given that CLOW's bid is $448,000 less than the second lowest bidder, James Jones, it's in the interest of the department, the residents of these cities, and the taxpayers that the board look further into this matter, allow CLOW to submit a sample hydra to be retested with gauges that are calibrated, that have correct readings, with a sample assembly that hasn't been dropped. For the reasons stated in the protest, we request that the board not take action on the proposal under agenda item 8 and take action as requested in the protest. Thank you.
Thank you. Marty?
Keith Session and Cree Horner and Lou Feldman, would like to come up and answer some of those questions. They can tell you a little more about the testing. It is true that the material that they sent us failed the test. It's a standard that we've had for decades on the books, and I think we also have a little history with the product as well. So go ahead, Lou.
Lou Feldmar, Assistant Director, Supply Chain Services.
Cree Horner, Water Distribution.
Keith Session, Director, Water Distribution.
Addressing the issue of the item being dropped, we have no record when the item was received that it was damaged or dropped.
And regarding the, and that is true, our main reason for them being non-responsive is the Burial did not meet the spec. We have a go, no-go gauge.
Can you explain what the Burial is?
Burial. Well, it's the part of the hydrant that connects would connect to the main. So it makes a joint. When they brought it over, we put a gauge in it to see if it even meets the specs, and it didn't meet the specs, and that's the only requirement that we would need to reject it. But we went further to try to test the hydrant, and we tested the hydrant, and we we relied on the gauge that's on the machine, the testing machine, and at 275, the pipe came apart, and we expect that it would hold at 375. And it wouldn't even hold at 300. That's not the criteria that we basically use to make them non-responsive. The item itself does not meet the specifications that were spec'd out. And as for CLOW, they in some other bids in the past, they have produced what we've called out in the spec. In a recent bids, because the hydrant contract lapsed, we've had to spot purchase hydrants, and we have their bids. We can compare the bids. They bid the correct part that we spec'd out, and they received that bid. In this case, they didn't. The next bidder, which was James Jones, they met the spec. They were responsive, and we request that you rule.
Commissioners have any questions or comments?
I do. Referencing the history, it appears that just during the past 2 years, there's been two primary bidders, James Jones Company and Clow. And it seems that James Jones has been given approximately 80% of our business, whereas Clow has had two opportunities within the last 2 years. To me, that's troublesome, and I'd like to understand why there aren't more bidders. And I also would like you to address the video that the public speaker mentioned, where he felt that there was just not very clear communication given in terms as to what was expected.
Well, the first question was why we didn't have more bidders. Yeah, we had a lot of people interested, but they were distributors, and they weren't. They didn't make the. They don't make what we need. So basically, those are always going to be the two bidders on hydrants. That are James Jones and Cloud that would even come close to the specs. Cloud, in the past, they do make a fitting that or have supplied a fitting that meets the spec. They didn't supply that fitting in this case, and that's why if they had supplied what they did in the other bids that they were successful, they would probably, with that, with the amount, then they would have been the successful bidder. They didn't.
And in this case, so they're the two big manufacturers, and it's always been a little bit of award.
But would you address the video and the sense of like feeling that the requirement wasn't clearly stated?
Realistically, we don't even have to test them by the spec. They didn't pass on the go-no-go gauge and on the coatings. We did because we've had problems in the past. We had one of these hydrants blow off when it was
But the video that was mentioned where he feels that there was like a false advertisement in the procurement process, that troubles me.
No, I don't, well, what we did is we went ahead and hydrostatic tested them anyway. So we hooked it up, we put it on a pump, and we were pressurizing it, and as it got to 275, the fitting blew off. And so it had to hold at least 300 pounds for 15 minutes by our spec to pass. It never got there. It never even got close.
Were there conflicting pressure gauges in the video?
There was somebody in the background said, oh, I saw 300, but we don't know what he was referring to. But in any case, it never came close to holding 300 for 15 minutes. The gauge that's on there is calibrated. We do check them.
So the calibrated gauge at 275?
Yeah, it blew off. And like I say, the reason we're doing this is we've had problems in the past with them blowing off in the field, so now we check them before we accept.
Other comments or questions?
Was that answer satisfactory? I don't know if you...
I appreciate your commentary, and I've served on this board long enough to know that this item will pass, but I'll be voting against it. I just think that the items that were brought up, they're too troublesome without having seen the video, and I wouldn't in clear conscience feel good voting on this, but with all due respect, I will let our president take a vote.
If I can respond, I think just to clarify, so before the field testing, it failed the spec. Even before we tested it, we did the testing as an additional measure. Correct. So it failed the spec without even testing.
And it's size-wise, and it have our go-no-go gauges. This happened before any pressure testing, and it didn't meet the standard. And it goes into tells the size of the depth of the grooves that need to hold the gasket in, and the depths were much out of tolerance. The gasket wouldn't even stay into the pipe. But just to take it a further step, we went along with the testing procedure to see if this different type of fitting would test and would work. It wouldn't meet this test, and it wouldn't meet the pressure test. So.
Well, I mean, I hope that you understand, each of you, that I respect how diligently you serve the department, and I hope that you also, understand that for me, procurement is a big priority. And just to give the information that I have, I just would vote to defer it, but at the same token, I'm one of 4 votes this time, so thank you, but I just still feel a little troubled by the information that was relayed.
Can I have an additional time to respond, please?
Rather than litigate this sitting here where we're not technical experts, I think I probably, and I don't usually like to do this, but I would probably second Commissioner Noonan's thoughts that if we can wait, if this can come back in 2 weeks? Can this come back in 2 weeks?
We're just buying on spot purchase in the meantime anyway, right?
We just got some spot. We can.
So if folks can try to resolve this, resolve the issues involving the video, there's only 2 vendors in this space. If folks can have a conversation with the gentleman who spoke before and come back in 2 weeks, I think it'd serve us all well.
So do one of you move to defer?
I'd move to defer.
Do another of you second?
Second, I thank you.
Those in favor of deferring?
Aye.
Aye. It's deferred.
Thank you.
Item 11. Commissioner Barad, Commissioner Funderburk.
I'm 19
Yeah, it was
through
Fleming.
22.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right, no, that's okay.
Commissioner Fleming.
I just thought this was,
I
this
can't read my
looked,
writing.
I thought this looked really interesting, and I just thought Marty might have some insight and some wisdom into share into this terrific project.
So absolutely. So this is a really neat pilot program. We're following the example that a couple other cities have set. We actually have a few recycled water connections where the public can take recycled water. It's been very, for the most part, limited to some ranch owners in the Southern Tahunga area that are trying to reduce their use of potable water and still maintain the ranch properties and the horse stalls and such. In this case, we are putting a recycled water connection at the LA Zoo parking lot where we can get people out of traffic, and also a second one over at the LA Glendale Water Reclamation Plant, which is across the river right there in Atwater. And the purpose of the connections would be to allow anyone in the general public to come and receive recycled water that they could then use in their own home, their own property. It's not for it's not really intended for commercial use. There's a limit on the amount of water, which is pretty much what would be the max that somebody could use on their property in a year. There is some training involved. There's some costs involved with this. We have to have, because of the fact it's recycled water, it's Title 22 water, so it cannot be consumed. That we have to give people a brief training before they take the water, and they have to have storage carriers that are labeled appropriately so that no one accidentally uses the water for consumption. And so we have to have staff on hand when we do this. We are starting out with a weekday at the zoo, and then another time we're working out at the LA Glendale plant. We're looking about weekday evenings and also weekends, trying to work on the availability of those locations with crowds and other patrons that they have at the area, and then also with what the staffing issues and costs would be. We'd be giving the water away and requesting feedback from our customers, but the whole goal of this is to create a familiarity with recycled water, to see how it can be used to offset potable water use, to have people become more comfortable with it as we expand the use of recycled water throughout the city. We think it's a great program. Really looking forward to getting this one going. And actually on Friday the 17th at 3:15 in the afternoon, the mayor's scheduled to do a press conference, a ribbon cutting at the LA Zoo parking lot, which I'd hope any of you that are free could attend and join us. So this is a good step forward with trying to make recycled water more publicly available and have a little more personal experience and get feedback. And then it could become a permanent connection. As we evolve, we'll learn a lot about what this takes to man the level of interest in the public. But this is a good step forward for us for actually making recycled water something that people actually can deal with tangibly in their own homes.
Who do we hope shows up to utilize this, and talk about the containers that folks would either have to purchase or would bring themselves?
Right. So people have to have a container that's labeled appropriately. And is Serge? Yeah. Serge Shaddad can give you all the exact details of it, but they'd have to be residents of Los Angeles. So we're supplying the local residents in the city. And Serge, you want to talk a little about the containers and how the process actually works?
Sure. Good morning, everybody. So the customers are the ones that have to purchase their own containers. The containers can range in size. The limitation is up to 300 gallons per operating day. So if they come back multiple times that day and they add up to 300 gallons, that's sufficient. We want to make sure that the containers are safely labeled, as well as safely stored on the vehicle, because it's water's pretty heavy. So if you're driving a car and it's not correctly put in the car, it might slosh around. So we have staff out there to help out with that as well. Does that answer the question?
And then as far as training, just with the training and the outreach we're going to do?
So other cities in the state of California have already done programs like this, so we emulated their model, and we looked at the kind of training that they had, and we added our own training to it. Since this is primarily an outreach activity to get people to accept recycled water, we wanted to set the context, talk about the drought, talk about the needs for local water supply development, and then go into the do's and don'ts of recycled water use. Basically what Marty was saying earlier, do not drink it, do not bathe in it, make sure it's contained in a container that's labeled and sealed, do not connect to existing potable lines, things like that. So.
And then we'll expect to report back or
Yes.
results of all this. Timeline roughly?
Well, the pilot will go for about a year. Do you expect some interim results as we roll this out?
Absolutely. We're working with the zoo. We want to focus on the dry months. That's why we're starting this early. It's because we know people need that water during the drier months more so. So by October, November, we're hoping to have surveys back from customers, residents. We have our recycled water advisory group very interested in this. Some of them will be at the ribbon cutting ceremony as well. So I'm hoping to get good feedback for operation times, days, what worked, what didn't work, and how we can make it better.
Great.
I had a quick question. Are we committing ourselves in this pilot program to anything more that's much more significant in terms of financial commitment? Like, is this a pilot to demonstrate something that's going to result in something that's 10 times or?
I think the longer term question will be if there's a lot of interest in this, we'll have to decide, are we going to, will we make a permanent facility that people can always come? Will we always have to man it? This is an issue, of course, we'll have to deal with the health department on. And then at this point, we're giving the water away. It's not a huge amount of value unless somebody is a really regular customer. But, and that's one reason the board needs to approve it, because we're not selling it as like a regular service connection. So we'd have to look at those kind of policy questions down the road potentially, but it's really to get recycled water out into the community and get its use become a more normal thing. So there's no real implications of anything beyond this other than what we continue as a long-term program.
But there's no financial commitment that we're setting up here?
So if I just can add, we capped the amount of water we're giving away for free up to an acre foot. That came around $500, just the value of the water. The real cost is buying lawn signs that we give to residents that they can put on their lawn telling people that they're using recycled water to keep their gardens healthy. So it's a lot of the advertisement side of things.
Mm-hmm.
If this grows more and if the board wants us to do more with it, then we can come back and re-examine how much more staff time that would take, how much more water we can give out. I highly doubt we'll reach 1 acre foot in the year. I think 326,000 gallons is a lot of water, so we'll probably be on a fraction of that. But we wanted to do a pilot to really see how successful it could be over the long run.
And does this credit us to meeting our mandate at all on ED5 or not?
It'll help reduce to some extent potable water use, but it's hard to say how much, because people have to make an effort to go get the water and to use it. So to the extent that they don't use potable water, it would help. But I think on the size of LA, I think it'd be kind of immeasurable during the pilot. The most important thing for us is the outreach and the feedback.
If I might add a brief comment, particularly for Commissioner Barad, I know this will be music to her ears. During the process of talking to the community about the rates, the department was confronted with some very ardent activists who had band together to just volunteer their time to water public trees. And we're trying to get access to this kind of water in a way that was acceptable to the department. And this is one of the instances in which the department really has responded and worked through some intricate and difficult questions that would enable this avenue to be opened up. And I also know that you're aware of the severe change in rate design affecting community gardens. So I think it's a great experiment, and it's also a good example of this department being a good listener to its community.
Is it going to be replicable in other parts of the city?
Yes, it could be. Before we did this launching, we did a lot of research, how many fill stations we have all across the city of LA, which ones are suitable. Some are more accessible than others. We don't want to block traffic. We don't want to make it inconvenient. So we can perhaps invest some dollars to make things more accessible in certain areas, like the west side or the south side of Los Angeles, because right now the zoo is closer to the valley in the valley area, and so is LA Glendale. But with more momentum, with more understanding, with more acceptance, I think those are very likely.
Yeah, this is a logical place to start because it's easy to, you have a big parking area to use. We're out of the public right away, and at the same time, there's only recycled systems available in certain locations. This was kind of ideally set up that we're able to do this pretty quickly and easily without having to do a lot of construction.
Thanks. Thank you.
I have a question. Where does the water come from, the recycled water?
So this water will come from the LA Glendale Water Reclamation Plant. It's the one located just across from Griffith Park on the east side of the LA River. It's co-owned by Los Angeles and Glendale. We share the water 50-50. And so it's the same water that goes into the irrigate Griffith Park, Forest Lawn, Mount Sinai, Universal Studios back lot, Lakeside Golf Course. So it's that same supply of water. It's the same supply of water that will be working its way south from Griffith Park and also is going down San Fernando Road and toward Elysian Park and downtown LA. So there's a good-sized water reclamation plant. It's called Title 22. It's tertiary treated water. It's near drinkable quality, but not drinkable. It's not the advanced treated, real expensive water like Terminal Island that ideally, and then in Tillman in the future, we'll be putting in the ground. So it's ideal irrigation type water, and so it's produced right there in kind of a central hub in the Glendale Narrows there.
I think it's a great idea. I really do. I mean, just in my house with all my fruit trees and the vegetables I grow and the roses, I've been using recycled water, and so I see the benefits of it, and I think this is really a great thing for the department to be pushing the benefits of using recycled water. And also, on my neighborhood council, we have a very active committee called Green and Beautification. And we really take care of all the trees in Sherman Oaks, and we're forming other committees like this, Green and Beautification, throughout the valley. And I think this would be a real plus for us to use in the valley, especially during the summer. I think this is a good time because a lot of our trees are dying because they don't have water.
We have the pipe out in the Sepulveda Basin out of the Tillman plant, so we don't have as wide a spread network going east-west, but we do going north-south. So we have some temporary connections on that already, but we'll continue to look for other opportunities to spread this throughout the city.
Well, and I'm glad that it's a pilot program, and I really think you should be commended. I think it sounds terrific.
Thank you.
It's definitely a team effort. So LA Sanitation's working with us. We work with Glendale. So.
Okay.
Any other comments or compliments? Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Congratulations, and it's unanimously approved.
Thanks, sir.
Commissioner Funderburk, I have a sneaking suspicion that you have the same issue with items 19, 20,
Yeah.
21, and 22. Do you want to raise them all together?
Yes, I do. DWP is not regulated by the California Public Utilities Commission. However, the Public Utilities Commission has since 1988 had in effect General Order number 156. General Order number 156 by the California Public Utilities Commission is required that all investor-owned utilities meet certain supplier diversity requirements related to LGBT-owned, women-owned, disabled veteran-owned, and minority-owned businesses. I want to make sure that the law firms that we are renewing our retentions with or retaining are aware that we are going to be implementing requirements similar to CPUC Order 156 to be consistent with city's charter, et cetera, so that the law firms know that the partners, associates are reported by those classifications. So that was just the reason for my calling that out.
And my response would just be that many of these firms, I believe, already do work for
Yes.
regulated utilities under the PUC. So I have every
They
reason.
shouldn't have a problem.
Right. And so I think if they're not aware of the fact that the department is moving in that direction, we will certainly make sure that they are, and that those are once the requirements are made clear, we will make that clear. But in the meantime, we will inform them of the fact that that's where the department is going.
Can they report, since the first reporting under corporate performance standards and other metrics is February 2017, can they be reporting their this work before the end of the year?
I think I would want to check with them, obviously, but I would not see a reason why they should not be able to do that.
Thanks.
So with that exchange, Commissioner, would you be comfortable?
Yes, I'll make a motion to approve.
For all four?
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
They are all approved. So we move to the regular agenda, item 23, sustainability, approval of the Elysian Park downtown water recycling projects in accordance with CEQA.
This is an item that came back. We deferred this about a month ago, 2 meetings ago, in response to concerns from the local elementary school that was along the pipeline route. And so we have Susan Rogani, who heads up WETS, and Bill Van Wagner, heads up water planning, and Chuck Holloway from Nancy Setley's environmental group here to talk about. They give you a revised presentation that hopefully answers some of the questions and concerns that were raised 2 meetings ago.
Good morning. Chuck Holloway, Environmental Affairs. Basically, we're here to present the Downtown Recycled Water Project and the Elysian Park Recycled Water Project. And the requested board action today is to approve the project pursuant to CEQA, certify the EIR, Environmental Impact Report for the projects, and approve the mitigation monitoring and reporting plan as presented in the EIR and within the board resolution, which would also include the cost of mitigation and permits. Just quickly to go over a couple of things like the objectives so we're all on the same page. These projects are in order to help improve the reliability of the city's water supply through the increased use of recycled water, comply with the urban water management plan, provide recycled water to some of LA's largest water customers, and to comply with the mayor's 2014 Executive Directive number 5 and Sustainability City Plan. The Downtown Recycled Water Project, as shown here, is basically all this stuff here in purple, and then the dots, the red dots, are the customers or loads. And then the Elysian Park Recycled Water Project is really why we're here today, is again, it's the pipelines or the lines illustrated in purple, and the yellow and blue is potable water work that would go on in Elysian Park. And the area we're really here to talk about today is this area in Elysian Valley. These alignments, there are 4 alignments that we had looked at as alternatives, and I'd just like to point out that all 4 alignments were determined through the Environmental Quality Act process to be less than significant under all of the environmental factors that were evaluated under CEQA. Therefore, a statement of overriding considerations required when the board approves a project that has unavoidable significant impacts in one or more of the environmental factors evaluated. And in this case, none of the alignments require a statement of overriding consideration.
So if I could just interrupt real quickly. So last time we talked about could the board direct us to do a different route. So under CEQA, none of the pipe alignment is not a CEQA consideration. So we're free to pick whatever route you'd like us to pick. So it's not a CEQA issue.
And this is an overview. It's not the slide you have in front of you, but we're going to start out over here in Department of Sanitation's property. One alignment went down through residential and up Riverside and across the freeway. The one that we had proposed went straight on down through Doris Place. And then another one went up the river and across this way and down. And then there was kind of a hybrid that went up that way. And, oh, okay. Somebody changed the presentation on me.
Reggie's playing tricks.
Yeah. We were asked to go back and do a comparison, and present it to you all for consideration. And as what we did is the Crystal Street, Doris Place was the baseline, and that's why there's no difference here, but it does show construction duration of 5.5 weeks. It has the total length of the project, and then we present them in kind of the order going from the next lease cost and lease construction duration. You know, it's not only the impacts to the actual street, but also the community as a whole is impacted by longer construction.
And that first one is the one that goes by the school.
And that was our proposed project, mainly because it is the shortest construction time frame, shortest distance, and least cost. And so there, again, there are the examples. The Doris Place right here. Last time we were here, there was a presentation from the principal and some of the residents regarding the school. All of it starts right here in Department of Sanitation. There's a connection there. And just real quickly, I'll show some examples of what the streets themselves look like. First photograph is looking back down into Department of Sanitation. The connection's going to be back here. And then the next photograph's down Crystal, and we're going to walk and see this area here with the residential. That's down Crystal. That's looking along. It's concrete, residential on both sides of the street, and Riverside's up here. We're not talking a long distance, but where the trees are there. There's looking back at sanitation down there to give you an idea of the length that we're talking about for construction. This one we believe is probably the least desirable just because of the number of residents. And then here's looking down Doris Place by the school. You can see the school here and the property. What we're proposing is going to look like this when we're done. This is where they had done a cut and had done some trenching in the past. I don't know when it was done, but that's an example of what this will look like when it's done. And then this is at Blake Avenue, looking back at up towards the school. The school over here and some residential here, concrete street, and looking back at Department of Sanitation. That's again where it would originate, come down here, and then one of the proposals would actually go right up here, and that's looking up Blake, and then right about here it would turn left, and one of the proposed alignments would go that way, which is right here, and you can see Riverside over here, so again it would be in front of residential. And then this would be the last one that is shown going up, kind of here's the river and the bike route, looking back at where it would come out of by the river and go down this way. Again, Riverside. And here's looking down Riverside. Here's the school, the parking lot for their faculty and stuff. The proposal would come down here and over in about this area would cross under Interstate 5. Now this is what we're talking about. We would go in and saw cut, concrete removal. We do our trenching, put in the pipe. At the end of every day, we would cover it with these steel plates. And if we needed to cover it for any reason, emergency access or anything, this is the way we cover it at the end of the day. And then this is an example what it would look like after it's been replaced. And this is a few years old. I don't know how long it's been there, but anyway, that's what we're talking about here. And again, here are, and I believe you might have them in front of you, but is a breakdown of the cost differential and construction durations. Now, do you want to?
Sure. I'll just talk about this part of it. This is a slide that indicates the filming revenue that the school was very concerned about over the summer months where we intended to do the construction. So it kind of shows you, we took a look at it. It averaged between 35, actually the average about between $30,000 and $40,000 a year, but you could see it's kind of cyclical. So this is the concerns that we have. And what we're going to do is, in order to ameliorate the concerns, we've made the commitment, which is the next, we made the formal commitment to the community, and we've added it to the resolution that We will be working with the Doris Place Elementary School, and we will be, if we get 48 hours notice before any type of filming, our crews have committed to pull off and make the street as it was before. We can't pave it, but we played it and leave it there so then the filming could take place. So they won't not lose any revenue, and then we would restore the trench to the existing conditions after we completed the construction. So that is in the revised resolution that we were committed to for the Doris Place Elementary School.
So could you go back one slide, please? So this is probably the key point, because we understood there's a lot of filming and a lot of revenue at the school. This is the last 3 years of filming. So in 2013, over the summer months, they filmed a total of 22 days. In 2014, over the summer months, they filmed a total of 5 days. And in 2015, over the summer months, they filmed a total of 9 days. So I believe our time actually in front of the school was about 2 weeks. And we have a commitment that we would clear out the street within 48 hours, which the film office has told us is adequate notice, that they don't get filming in any shorter notice than that. So, so essentially, we're looking at the trade-off. So, if we stay on the original course, then we would get in and out of that area in about 2 weeks. It seems like there's, in any of the past history, there's plenty of time in the summer to do the work without interfering with any income the school might have. If we take one of the other routes, we will certainly impact the residents who live there all summer long, and we'll be adding about $200,000 to the cost of the project.
Okay, now we come to the part where we're talking about, there was discussion about the economics of how we look at our recycled water projects. And so in front of you, you have a portfolio. It's a partial portfolio of the recycled water projects that use recycled water from Donald C. Tillman and the LA Glendale plants. And so basically the 5 projects you have there, the Sepulveda Basin Sports Complex, North Hollywood, Elysian Park, and downtown, which is here before you today, the Groundwater Replenishment Project, and Griffith Park South. In the right-hand columns, you have the capital costs, and so these are the initial capital costs that we anticipated in order to do these particular projects. The capital cost does have a range associated with it as you go forward. For instance, when you first start a project, you have a certain planning cost that you're associated with the project. Because you haven't started the design, and you haven't really gotten very far, there's a certain delta that you would assume. So that's why it says there's a certain range associated with it. As you go forward in design, those ranges get tighter and tighter until you're about to start construction, and then there's still a delta, but that accounts for any types of unknowns that you would encounter in construction. So those are the capital cost numbers. Then you have the unit cost numbers, and that's expressed in dollars per acre foot. And so what that really represents is the capital cost of the project plus any operation and maintenance cost divided by the amount of recycled water that you would expect to be used over the life of the project. And the life of these projects, we're assuming about a 50-year life, which I'll get into actually in the next slide. But that's where those numbers are derived. And then the next column is potable offset. So this is the amount of recycled water that would be used by these projects in a year. So it's an annual number. So that's where we get those particular numbers. And then if we go to the next slide, so these are the financial considerations. And just so you know, what we did was we had a third-party independent economist kind of review what our assumptions were and our methodology in order to evaluate our recycled water projects. We also met with RPA staff to go over how we are looking at the financial considerations for the projects, and both parties were in agreement that this methodology is good for how we are comparing and prioritizing our recycled water projects. So pretty much what we're doing is we're comparing the cost to supply imported water from MET to the capital and operation and maintenance cost of a recycled water project over its life cycle, the useful life. So we have, for instance, we assume a 50-year useful life for these non-potable projects. So these are purple pipe, mostly all purple pipe projects. So you assume, okay, if I get 100 acre foot a year for one of these projects, I multiply it by 50, and that it's going to be, 50 times 100, so 5,000 acre foot over the life of the project. The life cycle costs are expressed in dollars per acre foot, which is current dollars. So you have to say, okay, this is what it's going to cost me today. And we're comparing it to projected $1,550 an acre foot of avoided costs of purchasing the MWD water over the next 20 years. And again, this isn't current dollars because we are avoiding, if we use the recycled water, we do not have to buy met water. So we have a savings basically in not having to expend that money. And so it also does consider the use of local water, local resources subsidies as needed, which is something that we have gotten actually for three of these particular projects. These are grants that MWD does give us to encourage the development of alternate supplies because it is in their best interest also. So when you look at the projects and you look at how much you could save per acre foot of water, you use the metric of $1,550 per acre foot, and you look at what our metrics looks like. If you get something that's close to that, you know the project is something that you could, it's worth investing in. Okay, the next one is just to reiterate the board action is here today to ask you to approve the projects that are before you in compliance with CEQA, and it's also to certify the environmental impact report for the projects, to approve the mitigation monitoring and reporting plan as presented in the EIR and board resolution, and to approve payment for the permanent mitigation costs. So,
questions, comments? Commissioner
Some
Barad?
Yeah. You know, I've worked with Film LA, and I have found them to be extremely sensitive to community and working with community. And I think based on what you've reported and you're trying to make this happen, I think that this is going to work. And I think if we're only talking about 2 weeks in the summer, I don't see that as a problem. And I think we should go with your original route that you wanted, you know, to use. So I don't see that as a problem.
Other comments, other questions?
I would just say thank you for hearing what the folks from the school said. I'm sure they appreciate your willingness to do this. It does seem, my only concern would be, you know, Tom Cruise signs off to do a movie. It's all going to be filmed at this school. They say we need the site for 3 months. You know, what'll that do to us? But we're going to assume that doesn't happen, Marty. So, but I appreciate your willingness to be flexible on this. I think that's all the school was asking for, and so it seems like a terrific solution for all concerned.
And we'll commit, we will not interfere with filming whatsoever.
I wish to echo that sentiment. I think it's very important for us to be connected with our communities, and I appreciate the due diligence that you provided, and it does make sense now. It's a much more clear vote to move forward with your original proposal. Even though this item says that it's not a funding request per se, we have as a board received correspondence from people involved in the community stating that the rate of return on this investment is awful. So I would be interested, if not now, but perhaps in a future meeting, to have a clear understanding as to why we are investing such a significant amount of money on this particular project when there are other projects out there available.
We will bring a whole recap of our recycled water program to the board. So we did go back with the third party and the Ratepayer Advocates staff to review the assumptions made here, and they agreed that that these projects make economic sense. They're also critical for meeting the recycled water goals and the supply goals for the city. On the chart that showed the different costs per acre foot, I don't know if Chuck can pull it up. You know, you can see the different costs per acre foot. So all those beat Met prices, actually even current Met prices, except the bottom one. Now the bottom one is a project that's in flux, so that's going to Griffith Park. But we're already growing off that, because that's providing elevated supply. Commissioner Fleming went to Silver Lake Reservoir with me. We're already looking at growing that supply into new areas that would not otherwise receive recycled water. So as projects grow branching off of that, that dollar per acre foot will start to go down, because the facilities that we're building that are somewhat oversized for that one piece will then start to become critical elements of other projects as well. But it's really that red column that we look at is, I mean, we'll bring the whole economic analysis, but it's really, we know that if a project, just like a stormwater project that we do, there's a certain break point where if we do the project and we're not buying MWD water, that we're either breaking even or saving money, and at the same time meeting the policy goals of the city and the mayor.
Thank you.
And we look forward to seeing a ranked list of the recycled water projects. We've been working with them on the economic analysis. And utility of this size isn't necessarily going to start at the top of the rank list and move down through the bottom, because there's other considerations with recycled water. For example, the offtake agreements with the customers that cannot necessarily be presumed. The fact that the spine will be built before the spurs and constitutes a sunk cost. There's many reasons to skip out of merit order, but we continue to press them to use common assumptions for all projects and rank order the net present value so that people can become more comfortable with the decisions that you're making. And if you were to analogize this to building the last coal plant in the early 80s, and people want you to put it off because there's going to be solar and it's going to be 5 cents a kilowatt hour. At what point do you not spend money on one era before the next era begins? So when you rank order them, you're sure you've chosen the most cost-effective projects, so that if the world changes and desal becomes cheap, or Orange County gets to put their recycled water in the potable system, then you know you haven't wasted money on the bottom of the stack.
That makes sense. Thank you.
I did have a couple of questions. First of all, thanks for, I think you did a great job of responding to the comments. So I share the comments that fellow commissioners have about the school, and I think that the short duration that you're going to be there. My concern, I had two concerns. One was to respond to the community, but also I didn't want to be setting any precedent for 2-week projects where, they can essentially be worked around. So, but I did have a question on recycled water again. Are these federal or state mandates that we have to do this, or is this just ED 5?
These are not. So so the recycled water is part of our overall supply portfolio. So in the urban water management plan that we talked about last board meeting, so this is the document that I spared everybody. So in this document, it provides the roadmap for the next 25 years of water supply for the city. And of course, increasing our use of recycled water is key to that, and having less reliance on imported water supply. So it's really the city's goals. It's the mayor's ED5 directive, which basically goes hand in hand with the city sustainability plan, goes hand in hand with the governor's plans for reduced reliance on the California Delta for water throughout the entire state, and then goes hand in hand with the board's urban water management plan. So they're all consistent. They're all the suite of projects that get us to the water supply portfolio.
So there's no federal or state mandate. We're just going hand in hand with different policies that have been adopted by either the mayor or this board.
Right.
Is that right?
Exactly, and even from the governor on down. So the governor has, pressed every agency in the state to reduce reliance on the Delta. Recycled water has been a statewide goal. The mayor certainly made it the goals for the city, and in the sustainability city plan, as well as what we have in the urban water management plan. In addition, there's legislation now that's on the books. Senator Hertzberg has a bill out that's looking at requiring or mandating reductions of wastewater going to the ocean. And so the only way to reduce wastewater going to the ocean is to create recycled water and to find uses for it. So this is consistent with virtually every goal in the water industry is for the state of California and for the city.
But it doesn't sound like it's a mandate,
But it's
like
not
we
a
have to
mandate.
do it.
No, it's
so
not a
this
mandate.
is
It's
something
policy decision.
This is something that we're just doing as a board. Okay, and so I also had a question to follow up on what Commissioner Noonan was talking about, because I have the same concerns, and I have major concerns, not necessarily for CEQA purposes per se, but when these things come before us, that there be not just the standard CEQA EIR alternatives analysis, where you're talking about, which way you can go to mitigate environmental impacts, but there needs to be something more robust in terms of a financial analysis, because I'm just repeating something that I think and Commissioner Noonan, chime in if I get this wrong, but my understanding is there's a major concern that this recycled water goal or mandate, whatever, it turns into showers to flowers, toilet to tap within the next 10 years. All of a sudden we have 40 years of sunk costs that the ratepayers are going to get stuck with after year 10. So how do you say that that's $40 million? So how do future commissions look back and say to us, God, why the heck did you do that? You stuck the ratepayers with $40 million. Can you respond to that?
So we will bring back not only the recycled water projects, but also how they play into the future, because certainly as we move toward direct potable reuse, then the idea of putting more purple pipe in will maybe give way to finding more direct uses to get that water back into the regular water cycle. The projects that we're pursuing with the purple pipe projects are the ones that we believe pencil out economically. There are certainly more expensive projects that we would not pursue, and we do have the higher goal of trying to basically get recycled water back in the system. On this chart, you'll notice the fourth one down is the groundwater replenishment project. So one thing that's, if we do get more directly used recycled water becomes drinking water faster, that's what that fourth line is. And you see that that's actually more expensive per acre foot than this project. Now that is directly augmenting our groundwater. It'll become drinking water when we pump it out of our wells.
We like those things.
Right, it's a good project, but even that is more expensive than this project per acre foot because of the level of treatment. So even if the world changes and it allows us to use recycled water more directly, the level of treatment is going to be extremely expensive. And so that water is, even though it may take less pipe, it'll take a lot more treatment.
But will the ratepayers, and I think the Griffith Park one's even more troubling that we actually approved, I think, but will the ratepayers be stuck holding the bill for, as the ratepayers advocate said, that, building the spine but not ever having to use it because that the need for it cuts off?
Well, these uses, and particularly these that, except for the first one, they're all out of the LA Glendale plant. So the LA Glendale plant has no plans to become any higher level of treatment or any easy way to use a higher level of treatment for water out of that plant. These projects will continue to produce water that'll be used to offset potable water. So even if we do the recharge in the groundwater basin with highly treated recycled water, these projects will still offset potable water use all the way into the future until such time as the plant no longer exists. But they'll continue to save water every year and will continue to still beat the price of replacement water.
First of all, Marty, I have an enormous degree of respect for the Water Division and everything. I think that, and I understand CEQA, I understand what it's about, but I do think that the board needs to be better informed from an economic standpoint. And I understand also that this project goes through CEQA, it comes back before the board, right? I mean, does it come back before the board? Or we're essentially making the commitment to the money in a synthetic way right now because we're committing to, because we're approving CEQA as a lead agency.
So what'll happen on this project is that this allows us to move forward on the project. The pipeline that we're installing ourselves, which is most of the piping, would not come back to the board. Things like a tank that would go to contract or something like that would come back. So you would see individual elements, which is one of the reasons, if you recall, 2 weeks ago, or 2 meetings ago, we struggled with the question of are we approving the project or exactly what. So there's not a project coming back as a bid item because we're not hiring a consultant or contractor to build the whole thing because we're using a lot of in-house forces. So this is where we commit to building this project, but most of it will be built with our regular pipeline forces that put the pipe in, as are most of the recycled water projects, until you see like the directional drill in Griffith Park or a tank that has to be constructed. You'll see those elements separate. But I think you bring up a good point that we need to, it's been a long time since we looked at the whole suite of recycled water projects and exactly how we're going to accomplish them. We have somewhat finite list of what we want to build with purple pipe projects, and then we have a cutoff where we don't think it makes any more sense. So we need to bring that back to the board, and you can review that. When we go through the budget, we have recycled water budget, a lot of projects listed, but we don't get into project details at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So this is within the pool of money that we've allocated to recycled water projects. What we're doing is selecting what we think are the most effective projects to achieve the city's goals at the best cost.
Okay. Mr. President, we rarely disagree on things, and I'd like to be on the same page with you, but I'm going to vote against this, but I don't want that to be interpreted. I want to just send a signal that we need I think that we need the economic analysis on these things. The stormwater capture and the recycled water projects, we need that. But that, I think that CEQA probably looks fine, so that's what.
I was going to vote for it.
So just so I'm clear, so you'd like to see, we have just, of course, the finish slide here, but you'd like to see more of the details of what in. We did use a national engineering standard, actually international engineering standard for the economic analysis. So you'd like to see that.
I'd like to see a little more drill down in the response to basically, I'll just be open. To Jack Humphreyville, I thought raised some very legitimate questions on the stranded costs, and I don't think that, we ought to be stuck in that pipeline, so to say. And I think it ought to be answered to in terms of, look, these are the alternative other projects that we looked at, and this is the reason that we chose this from an economic standpoint. There may be a reason. I understand we talked about it last time, portfolio theory. Right. And diversification, and there are reasons to pay more for certain things than for others for diversification purposes. I just don't think it's been articulated well enough, and for that reason, I'm going to vote against it. But I believe, I don't want that vote to reflect on what I believe is our enormously professional water department, because I don't think that you are probably not looking at this issue either. You were kind of focused on the school thing, and I didn't raise it as much until it was brought to my attention. So that's how I'm going to.
And I can tell you, without having to say, trust me, I can tell you there absolutely are no stranded costs in this, in any of these projects. The question would be if at some point in the future there's a cheaper way to use the water, which is at this point speculative and off a decade or 2 decades.
So basically you're saying we can't predict.
Right, but in any case, so this is almost a situation of could we have saved more money? We don't know, maybe. Are we saving money with this project, and this is what makes sense on its own, regardless of that? Absolutely. We will not be behind the 8 ball on this one in any way, shape, or form.
I have utmost confidence in your opinions.
I'll bring you the data. You should see for yourself.
I have just been informed that we now have 2 speaker cards for this item.
And it,
oh,
if I might comment to respond to Commissioner Funderburg's concerns,
speak into the mic.
Yeah, I'm trying to get it closer, and it's like.
It's very nice. Go for it.
The ED5 policy that was stated has been transferred into the urban water management plan, but it's a very conceptual direction to improve local reliability. And then the urban water management plan has no fiscal analysis really that's thorough. The department also has a recycled water plan that also doesn't really begin to let you grapple with the fiscal impact. So everything we deal with in a planning arena is looking at 10-year horizons, very, very long-term horizons. And so the slip between the cup and the lip in this industry is what happens between the plan and the rates. And you recently approved rates that had a certain amount of money allocated for recycled water and improving local reliability. So now you're confronted with project-specific authorization requests, whether they be CEQA or something for a tank or something for someone to dig a trench. It's all project-specific. But that missing step in between is what you're being offered to come forward before the board that we're working on them with. And we really want to see them rank them in cost-benefit order, because even when we go out of order, you'll know why. It'll be clear. It's because this recycled water is never going anywhere else and therefore can't be stranded. But the ranking with common assumptions is something we continue to advocate strongly for.
I appreciate that. I mean, I think that the other thing to factor in, which I've asked, and then Dave Pettyjohn has done a great job with DeLon, is factoring in the cost of resilience. It's something that we, still don't do. I don't think adequately enough. And so on the other hand, I just would like to see just a more detailed economic analysis of what it comes down to. You rank them, but don't just rank it just based on cost, but you need to have other factors so that your costs are explained. And okay. Thank you.
Barbara?
Yes, the first speaker is Martin Schlageter.
Commissioners, hello. Martin Schlageter. I'm Policy Director with Councilman Jose Huizar. His district covers the downtown area and east side, among other areas. I just want to say thank you for the robust conversation on this and the continued attention to recycled water. It is indisputably a core component of the goals of reducing imported water and increasing our local water supply, something that the councilman has been very vocally in support of, both expanding and expediting. I wanted to note that we've been working closely with your staff on this to try to troubleshoot any areas as this passes through downtown and reaches out to the east side, both important destinations for this water supply. We have been very collaborative. We've been very encouraged by both their outreach and their conversations with us. We'll continue to, throughout the implementation, be working closely with them to help, again, minimize any community conflicts that may occur, to maximize the use here. And we have lots of municipal facilities that will be able to make use of this water and be robust demands on this water supply and good uses for it. We'll be working closely with you to move forward as you move forward with this, and we appreciate it greatly. I also just want to note that as the chair of the Planning and Land Use Management Committee in the council, Councilman Huizar has helped encourage building standards that will encourage the long-term use of recycled water as that supply becomes available. So I think another indicator that there is going to be long-term demand for this source. So very appreciative of the conversation. Looking forward to continuing working with you on this topic.
Thank you very much, and please compliment Councilman Huizar for his leadership on focusing on recycled water.
I'll be sure to do that. Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker is Christine Peters.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Christine Peters, Policy Director for Councilmember Mitch O'Farrell. Tap of the microphone. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Commissioners. Thank you for having us here today. Thank you, staff. We've been working on this with the DWP staff now. As a council member, has been in office since 2013, and previous to that, when the council member was on staff, when the project was actually just an MND, and it was only the Elysian Park water recycling plan and did not include downtown, which is then what brought us to have an EIR. The council member has a letter on file from June 24th, 2015, and if you don't have that handy, I brought one extra copy in case anyone takes a look at it. We support staff and we support the recommendation to use the route on Doris Place. We think that staff has done an exemplary job of working with the community and explaining as best they can that this is a standard cut and cover project. They do these citywide all the time without EIRs or MNDs. However, because of the large scope of the project and expanding it into downtown, it did trigger a higher level of environmental review. We think that this choice on Doris Place will be the best for the overall community. It will have the least amount of impact. It will spend a great deal of time going through the Bureau of Sanitation yard, which won't have an impact on any residences. It will actually have an impact on a city facility. The work on Doris Place, we have been assured, will be, upon completion, redone with concrete so that the street standard will remain concrete, so that for the filming, when it's a period show, it will still look like an old street. It won't look like a new asphalt street like we have today. We've also been assured that they will be limited to, as best as possible, 2 weeks' work, and any interruptions of a filming schedule will immediately be addressed, and we also thank staff for that. The other issue that we would like to point out to you as well is that this, beyond going through Doris Place, also crosses the Los Angeles River. There's a very important bridge component that is tied into this, called the Taylor Yards Pedestrian Multimodal Bridge, that we look forward to having, tying our two communities in Council District 1 in Cypress Park, and then in Council District 13 in Elysian Valley. And that is also a component of this project. So it's a very complex project. We appreciate the time everyone's taken in looking at this. We have been working closely with Doris Place Elementary School over the last 3 years. There was a change in principals last year, which, again, we thank staff for taking the time to introduce the project to the new principal. We actually went and did site visits in Boyle Heights to look at a project under construction that was a similar 3-foot trench, 16-inch pipe. And I think that having seen that, I think that they were able to be less scared of the work that would happen. I think that some of the information that had been given to them and the type of work that it would be was much larger and a much more onerous trench project rather than your standard cut and cover. So rather than take too much of your time, I'd like to thank you for approving this, and we look forward to seeing this project completed. Thank you.
Thank you. And please also compliment Councilman O'Farrell for his leadership on these issues. Are we ready for a vote?
Yes.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second? Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
Barbara, you got that? Council members Funderburk and Noonan, no. The other three, aye.
Since when did I become a council member?
You were just demoted.
We need you.
Okay, on that note, item 24, agreement number 47401 for proprietary professional, technical, and repair services and parts with GE Package Power, Inc.
Commissioner, if it would be so kind, I'd like to address items 24 and 25 in the discussion, even though you need to take separate actions for each one, if that would be okay.
Sure.
So the reason there are two contracts is that these are with separate GE units that support specific types of equipment. The first contract, item number 24, is for GE combustion turbines. Now these are the large jet engine type turbines that are for our quick start capability in our system. The second one, item 25, is for the GE combined cycle units. These are the ones we really use for energy because they're very, very efficient on our system. So that's 24 and 25, and they're separated. These are enabling agreements for parts and services to maintain the GE turbines, and they are as-needed contracts. And the reason that's important is that we don't know what parts or services we need until we open up the GE turbines and take a look inside. It's not unlike taking your car for an oil change and finding out that you need to change all the belts in the water pump as the mechanic gets into the system. So, and it's becoming more critical that we really have expeditious return to service of these units. And the reason is that for renewable energy, that's a year-long issue. Historically, we could schedule outages for months during the winter months. But because these units are being used to integrate renewables, the outage times must be kept much, much shorter because we get wind and solar all year round, and we're going to need these quick start and ramping units to support the renewable energy as we move forward. So by having an enabling agreement, we can draw the parts and the services to get in very, very quickly, diagnose, solve problems, and then get back out. They're also for proprietary parts and services, and this is why it is a sole source. And using the car example again, when you take your car to Mercedes dealership for warranty work, they want to use the original equipment to replace the parts, and they want to use the trained technicians. And many of our units are still under warranty, and that becomes very important. For the units that are off warranty, they're a little bit older, GE does warrant the parts and services for 2 years.
A quick question on that, because the material wasn't clear to me. It states that the bid advertisement date was September 9th, 2015. So How long have we been married to this company?
We've had the GE contract since we started doing our quick start units back in the early 2000s. And then we've expanded those contracts as we started to repower and do the combined cycle units. As we look further down the road for future repowerings and we do a competitive bid, it may not be GE who wins those awards. There's other manufacturers of equipment out there. Siemens is another big one, but there are others that could win that award. So we're not married to GE technology, but we are wedded to GE for the proprietary services for these units that are already installed.
And out of curiosity, what percentage of our equipment is GE?
That's a great question. I can tell you how many units that we have GE. We have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 9 units right now that are the jet engine technology. And then we have roughly, we have units at Valley, Haynes, and Scattergood, as well as Harbor for a combined cycle.
From a portfolio standpoint, I'm sure you understand where I'm coming from.
I'm going to ask staff to think about that and come up as soon as I finish the summary to answer that question. And they have the material they can flip through to get the actual megawatts, and Daryl's working on it right now. Okay, so we will answer that.
Thank you.
So now, one of the things we've done to try to control the cost of this proprietary technology is to look at the pricing that we've had before and hold the escalation below industry standards. So industry standards for this type of equipment is about 10% escalation, and that's what we've checked when we've looked at other service agreements. And we've kept this agreement at about 8 to 9% escalation. So we're trying to compress the escalation of these standard parts and equipment, and this is one of the ways that we've used to control costs. Also recognize that this is a task management system, and in your packages you see the estimates of all the work that's being done. Each task is a separate task that has to be reviewed and approved by our engineering group before they do work. And so they may spend minimal amounts of money. So this is a maximum contract. It could be 0 expenditures, highly unlikely, but there's the full range, and each task is managed separately. So what I wanted to also do is talk a little bit about why these contracts are really, really important right now. Is that with the possible gas curtailments due to Aliso Canyon, where they have their storage reservoir that may not be able to maintain pressures for our system, and we could suffer from Southern California Gas Company curtailing gas, we have installed the ability to use 3 days of fuel oil in our systems. However, we've not been able to test fuel oil in our GE units. Today, we have staff at SAQ, the South Coast Air Quality Management District, working on a variant to allow us to test this fuel oil as a backup fuel. And once we get that variance, it'll take us about 3 weeks to install this equipment. And part of the equipment that will need to be installed and some of the services that we need to draw on are from these contracts. So there'll be GE parts and GE services so that we make sure that we do not damage the units as we test this oil moving forward. And this is why the mayor's office has waived the CAO report on this, because of the urgency to get some of these parts and equipment so that we can get fuel oil up and running. So with that, I know you have that question, and staff will come up and help address the portfolio size, and you may have additional questions and comments.
Manager of Generating Station Engineering. Sorry.
Okay, I'm sorry. And Chris Lynn, Power Supply Operations.
So under the 2 different agreements, agreement number...
If you could pull the mic a little closer.
47400, which is the GE International, which is our combined cycle units. We have basically 10 units. Valley 6, 7, and 8. Haynes 8, 9, and 10. The newly repowered Scattergood units 4 and 5, and Harbor units 1 and 2. Under the what we call the General Electric package power, which is basically our standalone CT units, there's 13 units. Haynes 11 through 16, Scattergood unit 6, which was just recently repowered, Valley unit 5, and Harbor 10 through 14. So the breakdown is 10 and 13.
I think, I'm looking for the bigger picture. What I've learned, and it hasn't even been contained in the notes, is that we've been married in great part, but I still don't understand to what percentage to this company, and that we've been using them every year since 2000. And the question has to be asked, have we considered working with another company? Why has it been since 2000? This is a lot of money, and without that background, with that information, I'm just having serious questions.
Okay,
so it's not so much about listing the units, but
why?
And also, what of those units? Of the equipment, related equipment, what comprises General Electric's contribution to partnering up with them? Does that make sense?
Well,
Do
yes.
we use them exclusively for everything? And
We
have
do
we
not.
Since 2000?
So it has been a competitive process. Every time we went in to do a repowered project, it was a competitive process with multiple manufacturers. GE has won that for a variety of reasons. Primarily, they were the lowest bid when you look at the entire cost of those bids. And we can give you more information at a later date as far as some of the history of those decision points. Moving forward, we are not wedded to GE by any shape or form. And right now, we are working on Scattergood 3. We're working on the demolition. They're working on the ability to go out to bid to procure new equipment. And that's why I mentioned there are other manufacturers that can be very, very competitive in that regard. So moving forward, we are not wedded. GE is not the only technology. There are other technologies out there that will be competitive, but they need to compete when we do those advertisements.
Other comments, other questions?
I was just going to say, Mike, isn't it like once we choose a GE generator, it's like choosing a Ford. You have to have Ford parts for the duration, and but we can go out and buy a Chevrolet for the next unit.
That's exactly right.
But
And
once,
I understand that. That's not lost upon me. But the fact that it's been stated that we've been using them since the year 2000, that's 16 years at least, without any history, and you're asking us to agree to be married to them for another 5 years, I find that problemsome without, the information that you stated could be provided. I'm not interested in having the information provided next month when I'm agreeing to budget approximately $150 million over the next 5 years.
Right, Commissioner, there is no alternative to this. And the reason is that GE has proprietary drawings, parts, and equipment that we cannot really go to a third party and say, you're going to supply all the GE aftermarket parts and redesign those and come in with the expertise to our outages to move forward. So the units that are GE, we need to use GE parts, equipment, and materials, especially for the warranty work on the ones that are still under warranty, but also from a quality perspective for the units that are off warranty. So as we think about the future, the goal is to have a competitive process where we may find different types of technologies like Siemens, and then we will be having the same discussion, is that we'll be using Siemens contracts for the Siemens units if they're successful, or whomever is successful down the road.
Camden?
Just for context, GE has been a very dominant competitor in this field since 2000. It would surprise me if anyone else had won much business here. This is very typical. Even without the Aliso situation, our office would be in support of these contracts, as there being no other alternative. If you think about the way insurance works, you understand the importance of staying in warranty, because our insurance coverage can only protect ratepayers if we use GE parts and service, and there's an advisory component with the proprietary interface between the service and the parts. So I understand your concern that there isn't a more robust involvement, but that is very characteristic of this industry in the last 3 decades at least.
But we are seeing the industry change, and the other manufacturers are getting much, much more competitive in this environment. So we expect that that next bid will be much more competitive moving forward for Scattergood 3.
And I can add to that, for Scattergood 3, the second phase is the replacement of units 1 and 2 for the OTC once through cooling, and we do have Mitsubishi as well as Siemens competing with General Electric right now. So we don't know how it's going to go. It's going to come down to whoever the lowest bid is for that contract.
Is there a motion on item 24? I'm sorry.
I did have
Councilman Thunderberg.
As he said, demotion. I did have a question related to the NOx emissions that would be generated by using the liquid fuel. I mean, I know that one of the things that DWP did during the last energy crisis was they were able to keep the lights on. We were able to keep the lights on. That a number of factors, not the least of which is we have our own kind of self-contained system here where we're not reliant on, some of the state those other issues. So, are we going to trade back or are we going to be over-emitting if we have to use the alternative fuels?
So that's exactly the conversation that's being heard at the hearing board today, South Coast Air Quality Management District, about what are the emissions for the testing that's going to be required, what are the mitigations that will be acceptable, and we're hoping this is the second day of hearing in these discussions. We'll know more about the mitigation measures that we'll agree to in order to mitigate any excess emissions that would be the result of burning fuel oil.
So just to put things into context, 15 or 16 years ago, my recollection is that we paid, a significant penalty, but it was also a significant amount of emissions that took place, and the alternative wasn't this. It was actually coal that we ended up burning a lot more of back then. Is that right or not?
15 or 16 years ago during the energy crisis, there was a fear that we would go above our reclaimed trading cap allowance, but we never did during that entire energy crisis. We never had to go over, but there was a fear that we wouldn't be able to supply energy to the state of California and our surrounding neighbors when they were in an emergency. And so we agreed to certain things so we would secure that energy flow to the state. So this is a little bit different. But there are some similarities, and they're working for those mitigations that if there were to be a need to burn fuel oil, then we would know what we would have to mitigate versus trying to do things in advance on a fear that we could be curtailed, because we just don't know if we're going to have 0 days or 14 or more days. We just don't know.
I don't want to distract from this contract because that's what's before us, but it would be interesting for me, like in a month, to know what offsets or whatever ended up just separate and apart from this contract.
We could have that as part of the GM briefing, maybe at the next board meeting, because we'll know by then.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Before calling for a vote again, any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I'm just pleased to hear that with future projects that are being contemplated, that there will be a more competitive process now that there are additional manufacturers available.
Is there a motion on 24?
I'll move.
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? I think I heard 5 ayes. It's passed. Is there a motion on 25? Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? I think they were both unanimous. 26. Sylmar Ground Return System Replacement Project Ordinance to establish engineer procurement and construction criteria pursuant to Charter Section 371B.
So Sylmar is a large DC transmission line that brings energy from the Pacific Northwest, about 600 megawatts of renewables, hydropower from Pacific Northwest through Sylmar. We've upgraded the Sylmar facility. BPA has upgraded the northern facility. And what this is the ground, just like the ground in your house. You have a ground stake that if there's any sort of interruption, the electricity has a place to go that's safe. And so we have a ground line that moves from Silvar all the way through to the ocean and goes into the ocean 2 miles. It's 3,100 megawatts. It's a lot of grounding that's required. For the last 40 years, we've not done any real upgrades for especially the water portion of this ground line. So you're not approving the project today. What we're asking is approval for a design, procure, and construct contract, especially is important for the water, 2 miles of water ground line that goes into the ocean. It requires some special engineering and techniques to get that portion done. But we're going to contract for the whole portion of this contract. So that's what we're asking for, is that we can move forward with that design, procure, and construct ordinance.
I understand we have a speaker card on this as well as 27, 28, and 29. So let's call the speaker on this matter, Barbara.
Okay, the speaker is Linda Romney.
Good afternoon. I just have a question, and the question basically is, what would be the cost associated with this? I know right now we're eating the elephant a bite at a time, and you're referring to just merely an ordinance. However, there's going to be obviously costs involved in establishing a specific engineer and construction criteria. That's just the beginning of this project. As far as the ratepayers are concerned, is there a possibility of, along with the agenda item, of putting a dollar cost reference, please? Thank you.
I'd like to address that. It's in the board package. The estimated cost is $114 million. Again, we don't know the actual cost, but we wanted to frame that in the board letter.
Is there any discussion, comments, questions? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second. Those in favor? Aye. It's approved. Item 27, Power System Reliability Program expenditures for fiscal year 2016-17.
So this item is the first increase to the power system reliability pass-through. This was part of the rate increase that we just went through. It'll be the first increase which was planned, not the power rate action. Both rate actions have been in effect a little less than 2 months. This will start on July 1st. As you can see in the first paragraph, this will have about a $1.49 per month for the typical residential customer. We'll see an increase. The good news is in the next item 28 in the ECAF will go down about $1.67. So all in all, you're going to be going down about 18 cents, which is the beauty of the pass-through because some of our natural gas costs have gone down. So we have a presentation. If you have further questions, we can go through. However you want us to do it.
Does the board wish the presentation? Let's see if there are questions. In the meantime, we have a speaker card.
Okay, the speaker is Linda Romney.
Again, I'm just basically asking as far as the dollar amount, if that could be displayed on the agenda.
Well, I think he did provide a dollar amount per ratepayer. Is there a motion? I move it. Is there a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It's approved. Item 28.
So the next item is the energy cost adjustment factor. So again, this has been something as our quarterly adjustment primarily for fuel, purchase power, energy efficiency, and costs associated with the renewable portfolio standard. As I touched on, this overall will be a decrease to the typical residential customer's bill, going down about $1.67. And as with the last one, we have a presentation we can walk through should you be so inclined.
Speaker?
The speaker is Linda Romney.
I believe he's answered that the decrease is going to be $1.67 per ratepayer. I appreciate that. I just would have appreciated if it would have been on the agenda. Thank you for your consideration.
Is there a motion? Second. Those in favor?
Aye.
It's approved. 29, lease agreement between LADWP and Coresight Real Estate LLC to lease data center co-location space in Los Angeles.
Guy Lipa. This item is to enter into a lease agreement with a secure co-location site for our data center. Some of the main purposes for that, after doing outside evaluation, it was recommended that we locate our data center in a secure site that has backup power. The data center, our current data center is in a multi-purpose facility and not a site that is specifically for data center usage. It's suffered several significant outages over the last 5 years, and those outages are quite costly, so it's very important for us to move this forward. Some of the requirements that we set forth when looking for a new data center included physical security and a secure perimeter, being energy efficient, a location that gives our staff the ability to get to the center, the data center, if there's an emergency, and also physical plant reliability, so cooling systems, backup power, and also connection to our fiber network so we can ensure a secure location. So the facility we're looking at met all those criteria. It's also important to note that while the contract is for $58 million, a portion of that as part of a standard real estate deal is utility costs, which will get paid directly back to us. So the actual estimated maximum cost of that, this contract is closer to around $39 million.
Speaker card?
The speaker is Linda Romney.
Just basically would like to know the address of this location. Thank you.
What is the address of this location?
Because of, I think,
Are we
security
giving
reasons.
an address?
I see.
Why are we giving an address of a?
I totally agree.
Okay, never mind. I'm sorry I asked. There are security issues here.
Yeah.
Are there questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I'll move.
Second? Those in favor?
Aye.
It's approved. Thank you. File items. Financial services.
So we're going to do a presentation on item 31A, which will go through a lot of that report, and we'll talk about how we're using that new report.
So we'll hold that till 31. Power system, April.
Happy to answer any questions on the power system report if you have any.
Questions? Renewable portfolio standard projects, April.
And again, happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Questions? COO, April.
There's a report in your package, and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions? Back to 31A.
Okay, 31A. So as part of the new rate action, as well as before that, we've been working real hard on the DWP stat process, which is a better way of going through the metrics. We are more focused on the metrics. So joining us, starting who's sitting now, Ben Trong, John Chen, and Lisa Yin, all of them have been working on this. So what I'd like to do, if you go to the next page, the power system net income, this is something now that Marcy has asked us to go through. The last Monday of every month, as a management team, we're going to go over this. So this new format, I think you've seen for probably the last 4 or 5 months. We now have it updated for the results for the rate action. So for example, on page 2, you can see our power system net income, and we're trying to focus on where we're going at the end of the year. So these financial results, while the rate action is great, we need to closely manage our financial results. So if you look here, you can see the blue line is the actual. We're projecting that we will have a net income of $151 million at the end of the fiscal year. Now that's critical because part of that, which you'll see on the next page, we have about $117 million that is coming from the rate action itself. So you can easily do the math. If we're going to be at 151, if we didn't have the rate action, we would have been 117 million less. Obviously, $34 million of net income for a $3.5 billion revenue stream. We run into a number of issues, additional bond tests, the debt service coverage, all of those. So again, it just shows why we needed that rate action. On page 3, this is, I won't go through this in great amount of detail, but this is our income statement. And the bottom line on this, if you look at the retail revenue, and if Lisa has it there, yeah, you can see we're down about $72 million. That is related to the fuel and purchase power that you just approved in the ECAF going down by that $1.67. So that reduces our revenue from the customers. Just going down, and we'll go through some of the graphs on this, but depreciation and property taxes are down about $52 million. That's a good thing, but that's really because of the lower capital investment. As we went through the rate process, both on water and power, you'll see this in the water side as well, Marty and Mike have not been spending the money because they didn't have the funding. It wasn't secured. Now that the rate action is secured, that's the big challenge as we move forward, is to spend that money. And we'll talk about some of the metrics we have for that. So again, down the bottom, we're just talking about the actual right now is $45 million. That's after the entire city transfer shown there. And this is what we're monitoring. It's in a great level of detail, obviously. The next page, on page 4, is our cash balance. And so we have issued about $500 million for this fiscal year. We had $275 million that we received on May 19th. Mario Ignacio is back in New York right now doing pricing for $225 million. So we're adding $500 million to fund our capital program. We have a lot of payments for the power system that are due in June. We have principal payment of $99 million, interest of $156, the remaining city transfer of $130, so $385 million. And what we look at on this is, you can see, again, if we didn't have our rate action, you can't really go out and sell bonds if you don't have that revenue funding stream moving forward. So by selling those bonds, if we did not sell those bonds, we would have been $75 million below our minimum cash. But this shows right now that we're above where we thought we'd be. The actual cash balance, this does not include our debt reduction trust fund, which is about $500 million. But our target, the board adopted target, is 170 days of operating cash, which is roughly $1.2 billion. So right now we're above it, but we know we got that $385 million of payments coming. So we'll still be above it at the end of the year, but really thanks to the bond issue. Next page just looks fairly good on the retail revenue. Page 6 is the power system O&M. Right now, $26 million under the budget. This is, again, a very critical element that as we go through these DWP stat reports with Marty and Mike and Andy, this is what we're really going to focus on, is that O&M. The next page, on page 7, is what we were talking about on the capital expenditures. You can see here our spending as of April, our year-to-date was $888 million, but the budget was $1.3 billion. That underspending was, again, because we didn't have the funding. Going forward, this is where we're really going to have to focus on trying to spend these capital dollars that were called for as part of the rate action. We have that funding stream now, so it's very important that we start spending that money. But again, this is what we're reviewing. Marcy's reviewing with all of us on our last Monday of every month. On the next page is our accounts receivable. So this is how much outstanding do we have. This is active and inactive. And you can see the purple line where you see the 404 for April. So it has gotten better. It's come down. It's not down to the fiscal year 12-13, but again, it's gotten a lot better. And that's something that we're working on, and that I know CSD is working on very hard as we have the CCV settlement. Next is the water system on page 9. And again, you see a very similar story here. The budgeted net income was much higher. And again, as of April, you can see that the actual net income was a loss of $9 million. That's obviously not good. But because of the new rate action, adjusting for water quality, our base rate revenue target, I won't get into the details, our projection is we'll be at $90 million of net income at the end of the fiscal year, which will lead us to have the proper financial results. Again, back to being able to issue debt, having the debt service coverage ratio So it just shows the critical nature of why we needed to have those rates this fiscal year. The next page, again, I'm not going to get in the detail. This is what we'll be going through and looking at. That it reflects, you can see the retail sales consumption on top is -4%. And Marty will tell you that's really good on conservation. But in the retail revenue, you can see that's not so good because we got 163 million under. But that again does not reflect the rate action that's been taken place. And so at the end of the year, this should be $90 million, which is by design and what we designed in the rate action. Page 11 is the water system cash balance. And again, a very similar situation. So we had in April, we issued about $300 million of water system bonds. In June, about $130 million of bonds. And we have high payments here as well. Principal and interest for the bonds, which are only paid in June, pay interest twice a year, principal only once a year. That's $143 million. So at the end of the year, we're going to be right at $300 million, which is roughly 150 days of operating cash, which is our target. And that's something that's very important to the rating agencies. Again, if we didn't have those bond issues, we wouldn't be able to meet that criteria. The next page, again, conservation shows its head here, but it shows the need for the rate action. We are ahead of many of the water utilities in the state in the way that we have our rate designed to ensure that we do water conservation. It is financially the best thing for all of our customers, but it does have a rate impact. But this shows you that the retail revenue has been below what we budgeted because of the conservation. Two things on page 13. This is the non-pass-through O&M. So this is actually $11 million higher. So this is something we've been talking to Marty and customer service on. We need to work on getting this back down in line with it. We're at the end of the fiscal year, but it's something as we move forward we're going to work stronger on. The next page has pass-through O&M, which again aligns with the revenues. This is good, and it helps to reduce the overall revenue. Underspent, going to be the same challenge we have on the power side. We need to get out there and start spending and do the things we're going to do: infrastructure, water quality, all of those different things. And now we have the funding stream, so we should be able to do it. And then page 16. Similar to what we saw on power, we're better. You see the $103 million in April. We're down from the higher levels. We're not quite back down to the levels that we had in fiscal year 12-13. Page 17, and I think we talked about this in the budget, is just comparing labor and overtime. So in April, this is as of April 2016 for the fiscal year. You can see for the power, labor, straight labor is pretty close, 352 to 350, but overtime is much higher. It's basically double, and that OT is being used instead of contracts. So this is something we've been talking about, and we're monitoring on a monthly basis, especially as we go forward. This is just one piece of it, looking at what the labor is. We've got to look at the other things that we looked at on capital spending, O&M, and make sure we have the right financial results. Water, you see some very similar. The base pay is essentially the same, 156 to 154, but the overtime's double, same thing. The OT is being used instead of contracts. The joint results are fairly close on both labor and overtime. The next page is just a demonstration of the DWP stat. So this is something that all of us have worked on over about the last year and a half. And this is an online system. And you see the upper left-hand corner where it says General Manager KPIs. So if we go to the next page, page 19, if you click on that, this is what you would get. And you see these are the key performance indicators where Marcy at any time can look at, or anybody can look at, and can see each one of these different results. And you see in that upper left-hand, the pie chart shows that for the most part, the results have been excellent. You can see average speed, develop renewable power, mainline replacement, all of that is good. The SAFE is not meeting target, and that's why the one piece of the pie. And then for average speed of call answer, that's on the right-hand side, and you can see where the target is being 3 minutes, and has been discussed many times. That has been well below 1 minute now. On the next page, if you clicked on the water, so this is for Marty.
Jerry, what's SAFE?
SAFE is System Average Interruption Frequency Index, right?
Outstanding.
What?
Outstanding.
Okay.
It's the frequency, is how often an outage occurs.
Right.
That was a trick question. Very good.
He really is an engineer at heart.
I was going to say, I still have my stamp. So for the next, on page 20 is the water. So this is basically what Marty and his team have established as the key metrics for the general manager, for Marcy to look at. And again, you see similar results with all of the different metrics that are in there. For the most part, they're meeting the metrics. And the one that's shown on the right-hand side, and we have highlighted, is the mainline replacement. And you can see where the target is, and the actuals are above that. Now, this has the ability to drill down beneath that, and the next page is the actual drill down for the mainline replacement. And you can see on the left-hand side, it talks about the responsible manager, who the data coordinator is, the definition of the KPI, and on the right-hand side, it shows the actuals. So it shows, you know, in the period, so in the first month of the fiscal year, the target was 12,500 feet, and the actual was 12,950. And we have that each month all the way down through what the variance is, and you can see this is actually updated through May, where the target was 137,500, and what the water system has put in is 157,875. So they've actually already met the year-to-date goal.
Jeff, I had a couple of questions.
Sure.
When is this going to be available?
This is available right now.
It is, and what do you type in, like LADWP stat or what?
Yeah, we'll get you a link to it.
And are any of these, just going back to the KPIs for the calls and the meter replacement, small service, are any of these, do you have the capability of cross-referencing any of these by GIS, by geospatial information system, using locators?
We would have the capability. We haven't done that yet.
It's not, but is it in the system
I
in
think
terms of
I'll
the addresses?
I'll ask Mr.
The addresses are in the system, aren't they?
All the addresses are in the system.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
And then just the last part of it on page 22, we did, and this is something we actually got, I think, from the mayor's office. Started this, and we've now changed it some. But what we call a DWP dashboard. So this is a standard method of defining what the status is of the metrics. That has the KPI definition, the purpose and background, what achievement and milestones have been done, what the major issues are, and then the management's comments on the status. So it's a one-page dashboard on each one of these different metrics. So we have this for all of these KPIs. Again, this is something that we've started now. We're starting to develop and use more, but certainly as we go into the board-required metrics that will be coming up and starting in February of 2017, we bring it to your board, we'll be using this process. But it is, we've made good progress to date.
Camden?
I would just confirm what you just heard, which is we're seeing great progress in terms of an integrated management of the financials and the kind of the melding of the silos that have been off in their separate corners during the financial distress of 2010, 11, 12. So it's really great to see the rate case done and them moving forward with trying to pull back together around common measurement and management.
Other questions or comments?
Are you going to comment on the performance standards and metrics anymore, Jeff, in terms of scheduling and what your timeline is for getting them out?
So again, in by February of 17, which is I think when we come to this board for the first time, it's fiscal year 16-17. All of the metrics, the board adopted metrics, are required by February of 17. That's the first time we come to your board with that data, and it'll be every 6 months thereafter. We do it quarterly with the RPA, so that will start in July of this year, and then we'll be establishing. We have right now 53 current operational and financial metrics, And then there's other metrics as we have. We can implement those as well by that February 17th date.
So do you have a better idea of what the timeline is based on the last board meeting we had of implementing the equity metrics so that the board members are a little more informed?
Again, as we
to
get
what
our
the
hands
schedule
around
is?
that better, that's something that I plan on for the same time, February 17. We've got to do some work on exactly how we can do that, tying in the different things, if we can use the GIS and whatnot. But my plan is still February 17 for that.
But in between now and then, should the board expect anything or what?
We're going to have to do a lot of work through the summer to get that all set up so that we can even do it by then, because we've got to start in July, right? July is when the metrics.
I thought it was actually would have started already because the board approved this, back in February or March.
Right, it approved those metrics to begin for fiscal year 16-17 is when we're having all the measurement of the metrics. We've been working hard to get that all set up, and that's one of the tabs we have on the DWP stat. And again, if we add other metrics, we can do that, and the plan would be...
Well, it's not a matter of adding other metrics. I mean, we're not adding anything. The board already approved it, so
right.
I think it's...
We thought you were talking about the
Let
other equity indicators.
me just be clear. The equity metrics are not being added. The board already approved equity metrics because when Neil gave his presentation, that was part of his presentation that the board approved. So I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Okay.
It's not being added. The board already approved it.
So I guess, Commissioner, my only clarifying statement is we had 53 specific metrics. I don't believe, I'll go back and review, but I don't believe any of those 53 were specific to equity metrics. I'll go double check, but I'm pretty confident with that.
Okay, but in the testimony, the oral testimony before this board and before the city council, they were mentioned. So I think we need to fill that gap in so we don't find ourselves in 7 months having you to explain why you don't have the information that the board approved, and expected when we approved the went through the rate case. And I would encourage the close coordination with the Ratepayer Advocate's Office. Dr. Pickle's been very cooperative and the use of, as promised during the last board meeting, of PA consulting. And I was expecting a little more detailed schedule, frankly. And I think that this board is owed that than just, it's going to be in February 2017. In my remarks on April the 19th, I already said that. So I also said in June that the board should expect something more detailed. Okay?
Yeah. So let me see if we can work on that for the second meeting and next meeting.
Thanks.
With that, so we asked PA Consulting to look at the performance management process. So this is, again, I'm going to ask Wayne Lafferty to come up and give this presentation. We asked them to go through how can we best prepare ourselves with best practice to better have a more robust performance management process. So I'll let Wayne go through this presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, and thank you to the commissioners for the opportunity to go through this information. I'll try and be quick, realizing I'm sort of the end of the line here on the meeting today. So, if we can go to the first slide there, basically what we were asked to do was to say, okay, given the work we've done with utilities all over the country, large and small, to take a look at, based off the ordinance metrics that are in place, the new rates that are in place, the process that are in place, the current practices here at LADWP, what are other utilities doing that have some similar challenges where they got a rate plan in place, they have a lot of investment that underlines that rate plan, and what are they doing to manage the process so that the results will, in a sense, line up with expectations. I think this is the beginning of a process that's going to take a little bit of time to get into place, but in a sense, that's what we were asked to do. So if you look at the next slide, we've listed there several common practices that are used by, mainly investor-owned utilities, because frankly, to find a utility with the spending and the types of programs that you have and the types of large customer base, you pretty much have to look at, investor-owned companies for the most part. So we've identified some common practices they use to manage performance, and we've highlighted 3 of those there. And the first one there being that monthly reporting and analysis should really be looking at projected results. And I think you saw on one of the charts that Mr. Peltola showed in his presentation that they're actually already now starting to implement that, and that is to take a look at not just where you are today, but where you're going and where you expect to be at the end of the accounting period. The next one I've highlighted there is that year-to-date variances are important, but really only in the context of what does it mean towards your ability to achieve the year-end targets and to help you develop mitigating actions. You can't really change the past, but you can use the past to help you prepare for the future. And the third one I've highlighted is that it's very common and regular for cross-functional teams of very senior personnel to get together routinely and to discuss the resource allocations that actually make it possible not to get to where you need to be at the end of the time period and achieve the corporate objectives. Those are the 3 I wanted to highlight. You can read the other ones there in your package and on the slides. I wanted to summarize basically 5 recommendations and then focus in a little more detail on the numbers 2 through 5. The first is, to work to better align the planning, budgeting, and analysis processes throughout the year so that you establish a plan and you know where you're going to be and how you are against that firmly throughout the year. Number 2, as I just mentioned, really focus your performance management on projected outcome. Again, using the past to predict the future, but really focus on where you're going to be in the future. Third is to establish a performance management committee, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Fourth, to strengthen the financial acumen within the systems. There's a significant amount of programs that underlie your new rates and that underlie the data that will be required to address the metrics that have been discussed a little while ago. And that we feel that it would really be helpful for the systems to have a little more financial acumen within this to help address that. And then fifth, to look at some enhancements to the DWP stat process that was just discussed a little bit. I'll now expand on the 4 of those 5 recommendations. On the next slide, what we feel is important and what we feel actually we see a little that the department's already starting to move this way is that you really focus on projected results. Answering questions such as, are you on track to achieve the performance targets? What issues need to be mitigated, and identifying those up front so that when it gets to the February timeframe that was talked about and you have 53 metrics that have to be reported and discussed, is that you're not waiting until February when you're looking at it on a month-by-month basis and focus on what the results look like they're going to be towards at the end of that time period. And this ties directly to industry practices that really focus on where we're going to be, not just where we've been. It's really important, as I say, focus on the projections. The next slide talks about the recommendation to establish a new performance management committee, which we've recommended be led by the Financial Services Office. We understand that the process is in place to put this together. You can see on the left side there some of the members that have been recommended to serve on that committee. And on the right-hand side, you can see some of the responsibilities and requirements for the committee. And I'll just focus on a couple. I really want to highlight there at the top the importance that these people can make decisions so that collectively, and decisions where you can take action. Some of the resources required to manage the projects and to bring the projects to fruition are going to be cross-functional. I always like to use the example of IT, for example. IT is a joint system responsibility, but in order to make certain projects happen in water and power, those resources are necessary, and it needs to be important that the coordination of the use of those resources is cross-functional. And also that this group can be now used in the future to guide the budget development process that is is quite long and quite engages a lot of people, and hopefully help to reduce down the time and resources required for that process. Also wanted to note that one of the recommendations in the and observations, I guess is the better term, in the IEA survey is that there's a need for increased coordination and centralized oversight, and we believe that this process will help to meet that observation in that IEA survey report. The next page talks about the financial acumen. We've recommended the appointment of 4 new positions, 1 in each system. You can see there on the left of 4 system controllers that will actually bring financial acumen into the systems and allow a tighter coordination between the financial operation and the system operations themselves. You can see we've recommended it be sort of a joint reporting relationship, realizing that there has to be a solid line somewhere in order for operational purposes, but we've recommended that it be a joint responsibility, and that these folks are an important part of the decision-making and the cross-functional coordination, not just amongst the 4 systems, but also back to the financial services operation. You can see on the right-hand side, I won't read them in detail, the responsibilities of these positions, but you will note in the second bullet point there that it will help to tighten the linkages and not just between budgets and actual results, but also between the budgets, the results, and the metrics that have been talked about earlier today.
And just one thing to add on this. So the system controllers, it's meant to provide assistance essentially to Mike and Marty and to David and to Nancy on those financial results and having them be integrated with financial services. But as we just went through, it's pretty complicated when you go through our financial situation. So the intent of this is to really provide that assistance to the operational side.
And provide the assistance in a manner that's consistent from system to system, so that when it comes to pulling the results together, because some of the metrics are cross-functional, and when they're pulled together, it's easier if you have a consistent way of providing that information across all the systems. The next slide addresses in a little more detail the DWP stat report, which was which Jeff just presented a few minutes ago. We feel that over time, and this is an evolving process as was just discussed, that process and that report could be updated and hopefully to some degree simplified. There were 40-some metrics in DWP stat prior to the new ordinance. There's now, as was mentioned, 53 additional metrics. Adding that together, that's over 100. All of those are important, and there were probably some that aren't even on that list that are important in various aspects of the business. But what we've recommended is that there needs to be some prioritization, because typically you don't find a utility it's at the high levels, especially, and probably at the board level, that tries to deal with 100+ metrics on a regular basis. So we've recommended that number one is that you take a look at the existing DWP stat metrics in light of the ordinance and other metrics that may be discussed, and say, okay, is there any way to consolidate? Realizing the ordinance can't be changed, but maybe there's some others that can be modified or tweaked just a little bit to try and consolidate. And then you take the metrics and you sort of develop them into tiers. Okay, typically a utility will have 10 to 15, somewhere in that range of high-level metrics that are on the front page, so to speak. And then you would drill down more. So we recommended taking a look at that and say, okay, how many are going to be or should be in that high level, and how many or should be in another tier down, so that you're not trying to focus decision making on 100+ metrics on a daily basis. Then the last page in the presentation, I just wanted to mention, in the longer term, there are some other things that we recommend be looked at. One of the metrics actually addresses the progress on a new financial system. And I think some of the financial planning portions of that are already underway. But as that system is developed and spec'd out over the next 2+ years, that we need that in order to make decision making easier and to really align better with how other utilities develop budgets, et cetera, that you want to try and build in the abilities and the mechanisms to use to have more rolling budgets and not just take an annual number and divide by 12 or some other somewhat arbitrary mechanism. That you allow yourself to budget by month, so you can add another month each time. So as you're looking more at projections, you're able to add more to it. These are things that say that more to come into the future, and these are opportunities that should be looked at. And just briefly on the knowledge, from a knowledge transfer standpoint, one of the biggest challenges that the department faces right now, and every other major utility is in the same boat, is that it's time to retire, and a lot of expertise is moving on to the next phase of his or her life. And that as that happens, look at that as an opportunity to say, okay, what skill sets do we need in the future we may not need the same skill sets or the same positions or the same titles, whatever it is, as we did in the past, and use that as an opportunity as people retire and as new resources are brought in. So I will stop there and be glad to take any questions.
Okay.
Questions?
I do.
Commissioner Noonan?
Thank you. Would you elaborate on page 8 under financial results, second bullet? I don't quite understand that. Differentiate results and projections between base rates and recovery mechanisms.
So
Page 8.
Yeah, page 8 of yours under financial.
Oh,
results.
excuse me, yes. And I apologize for skipping over that and trying to save some time. There, in one of the unique and positive aspects, we think, of the LADWP rate structure is this linkage of different rate factors to specific types of expenses. So, for example, in the power system reliability program has a specific factor in expenses that build that up. One of the things that we've recommended, and we've actually talked a little bit with the systems about, is that when you're looking at your past results and your projections, consistent with other recommendations, is take a look at it by factor, because the decisions you may make on a pass-through factor, such as the power system reliability program factor, might be different than a decision you would make on the base rate factor, on the base rates.
Okay. And then I know that PA Consulting does so much work for the department and the city of Los Angeles. You keep referencing other utilities. Do you represent these other utilities, and have you helped them design similar best practices? I would like to get more information about the other utilities you keep referring to and your experience working alongside them.
Sure, I can provide some high-level information. If you would like more, just let us know. We'll be happy to forward information to you. Interestingly, first, we work with, I'll mention names, and companies such as Southern California Edison. We've worked with San Diego Gas and Electric Company. We work with Pepco on the East Coast. We've worked with Nevada Energy. We've worked with We Energies. We work with Con Ed. So we've worked with a lot of the major utilities across the country interestingly, on some matters just like this. I can't name the utility because of confidentiality, but interestingly, at the same exact time that we were having this analysis done with LADWP, we were having a very similar discussion about the role of a, quote, division or a system controller with another utility that we work with. So some of these exact same issues come up on a regular basis. Just give you one more anecdote. One of the things that we did when we were developing these recommendations was we actually met with several of those utilities and the people in those utilities that are responsible for the type of work we were talking about here. And I remember having a meeting with one of the large investor-owned water companies, and I basically asked them and said, okay, so you as the it was the CFO, and said, you as the CFO, what is your, how do you manage this? How much leeway do you have? And basically the message was, once the governing board, approves a budget, it's up to the CFO and the CEO and the operating people, in a sense, to make it happen. And that's why they use this whole concept of projections in the way they manage it. So the experience with other utilities comes from both water and power side, and was actually almost real time to when this work was going on here.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the last question I have is, as it relates to page 9, your last comment about redefine required skill sets as needed. I couldn't agree more as it relates to our department, but then you deal with, the civil service code and how difficult it is to change job descriptions. Do you have any additional insight or ideas as to how we could address that?
I haven't looked at the specifics on the civil service code and how it relates to specific positions. I do know that adds a level of complexity to what LADWP needs to, what you need to address as a board and as management compared to, say a Southern California Edison. It is different, but I believe that it's possible within that process and working with the bargaining unit and others to, we're not saying that you need less people but we're saying that you've got a long list of job titles today. So maybe instead of having 10 people and I'll make these numbers up, 10 people in Group A and 15 in Group B as you've had in the past, maybe it's now just 5 in Group A and 15 in Group C. because the skill sets that you need have changed. Frankly, 15, 20 years ago, when some of those job classes were developed, the concept of geocoding, which I believe the commissioner asked about earlier, for designing projects, that was maybe in somebody's future business plan. Those kinds of expertise weren't envisioned to be as important as they obviously are today.
No, I couldn't agree more. I think it's a very serious issue, but it is a very challenging process that we face.
We could probably have long discussion about those challenges.
Let me see. Somebody asked me who my constituency was this weekend, and I said, implying that I just speak for people in CD 8, 9, and 10. I am interested in equity. I'm interested in it from the standpoint of women-owned businesses, gender equity. I'm interested in it from the standpoint of LGBT-owned businesses, and I've made that plainly clear. I've been interested in from the standpoint of disabled-owned businesses. Basically, I'm interested in what amounts to the people who are left out, which is 80% of the city, of varying opportunities or whatever. I'm very interested in PA's work. I'm encouraged by Dr. Pickle's recommendation of you. I'm interested in knowing what PA has done in the area of equity metrics.
Okay, I'm not sure I fully understand the question, but let me give you. Let me.
As part of our corporate performance standards and metrics that the board approved and passed in February, and that the city council approved. One of the pieces of testimony that was provided to this board and to the city council was the addition of equity metrics that would cover those areas. Do you have, what's the experience that PA has in this, and will PA need supplemental support in doing this? I brought this up at the last board meeting. I was assured by the CFO's office and the RPA that they wouldn't need it. I just want to make sure that that support is there to support that function of developing and working with our staff on equity metrics.
Yeah, no, okay, thank you for the clarification. PA has, is an extremely diverse organization and has worked with numerous, and our employee base is extremely diverse to start with. Second, I think the department, as well as the city, has requirements for certain contracts as far as small businesses, minority, and all those, and we've always met or exceeded those as far as where we put together teams of people to work on those projects. If that's what you're getting at.
What I wanted to know is what's PA's experience on advising other utilities on this, because the idea is to benchmark against other utilities, either IOUs through the General Order 156 process, where the information is already there for the IOUs, or for the munis, which don't have the CPUC regulating them, telling them about fairness and diversity and other things like that. So that's what I meant.
Okay. Now, we have been involved. Again, I have to be a little careful on mentioning specific work for specific clients, because in some cases, and especially if it's in the investor-owned community, which is governed by the CPUC and the rules that you mentioned, we have been involving them on procurement processes. Advising them on helping them to develop procurement processes that are, provide, amounts or degrees of equity or meet equity metrics that meet or exceed the standards of organizations like the CPUC, not just and that in California and in other states. So we're very familiar with devising, procurement processes that match or exceed those types of requirements.
Madam General Manager, could I make sure that the statement that I read into the record is circulated to the board members and to management? Because I don't think that some of the management is aware of what I read.
Do you recall what meeting, sir?
Yeah, it was April the 19th.
So was I able to answer the question?
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Barad?
Where are you based, your company?
The PA is, really all over the world, but PA is the main headquarters is in London, but we have offices in Los Angeles, New York, Boston, Arlington, Virginia, which is the Washington, D.C. suburb, and Boston and Denver in the United States.
So not PA.
Pardon me? No, not in the state of Pennsylvania. I'm not aware. We do a lot. We've done work in Pennsylvania. I've actually been there within the last couple of months myself, but there is no specific tie to the state of Pennsylvania.
Okay. Since I'm from Philadelphia, I thought I detected a Philadelphia accent.
Well,
It could be Washington.
I maybe plead the fifth on that. I've
Yeah,
never lived in
Cleveland.
Philadelphia, but I have visited there very rarely. So maybe I picked it up when I was visiting there a few weeks
Yeah,
ago.
good. Well, it's a good accent. Okay. I wanted to ask you about your experiences dealing with utilities that are just water and just power, and then those like DWP that are a combination of both water and power. What you find in your experience with problems and efficiencies, and it seems to be they're two different bodies, really.
Well, a lot of the challenges and opportunities, frankly, are going to be the same whether you're providing water, power, or gas, or some combination thereof. For example, whether a billing system, they all have to send bills. So a lot of the opportunities for looking at new systems are the same across the different utilities. Same thing in a contact center environment, taking calls, the same types of metrics that are used, whether you're talking about, wait times or handle times for calls, those kinds of things. When it comes to, when you get into some of the more service level metrics, as was mentioned earlier, and I'll defer to the engineers over here, but when you talk about things like safety, obviously those types of operational metrics are specific to electric utilities. Leak rates are more, a metric for water utilities. So the metrics those types of metrics are a little bit different. But the same basic operational requirements are often similar whether you're providing water or electric or gas or some combination thereof. And I think we see here in California, you've got really 4 large entities, or at a minimum, you've got one with water and power, you've got 2 that are gas and electric, and one that's mainly electric. And when they're looking at rates, for example, they're looking at performance metrics and budgeting. It's not that different a process. Terminology, sure, is going to be different, but the process is not that different.
It just seems as though I know that we're one of the few utilities in the country where it's both water and power. And it just seems like a Herculean task for our top-level managers to manage this enormous department dealing with both water and power. And then where does one begin and one end, and who talks to whom, that kind of thing.
Well, believe it or not, that's often true in a utility that just manages, just provides, say, electric service. And the communication back and forth is really one of the factors and the importance of that, given the amount of projects and the amount of money that's being entrusted by ratepayers to the department, is really critical. And that was one of the major reasons that we recommended that they formalize this concept of a performance management committee. But even we know, basically every other major utility has a similar function, whether they provide just water, just electric, or some combination thereof. But the communication and the cross-functional coordination is really critical, and every other utility grapples with that same challenge.
Thank you.
Other questions, other comments?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because I wasn't aware of. I've heard of PA consultants so often, and many times I brought up, why do we continue using PA consultants? And I had no idea about your offices worldwide. Out of curiosity, your LA-based operation, how many employees comprise your LA-based operation?
Yes. In total, there's so many of us that are really not based at a specific location, because in this business you can live anywhere. I don't know the exact number of people formally assigned to Los Angeles, but I'm saying it's somewhere probably between 20 and 30, but I'd have to get a better number.
If you don't mind, I'd like some more information. Just out of curiosity, I went on the website and there were like 2 people referenced. So given the volume of work that we've done with your agency, I just would like some more information about paying consultants.
Yeah, I'll put something together and get that to you.
Great, thank you.
Other questions or comments?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm a little disappointed. I mean, I asked that when metrics get brought up, that there be something in writing put about equity, and I don't see it. It's not in here. I asked that at the last meeting. It's clearly something I put a lot of time into. This board, I assume, is supportive generally of it. I'd like to know when it's going to be put in writing.
Sir, throughout this, since we've been very aware of your particular interests, we have been working, certainly you have been working to assemble what your interpretation of those metrics was. And that information's kind of been evolved recently. In fact, I don't even think the board has seen it. And I thought what the plan was to walk the board through that and then have the board as a group direct us in terms of which of the metrics in the organization was most important to them. So my apologies if we didn't interpret it correctly. That's certainly my fault and not staff's.
Okay, that's my expectation, that there's going to be some explanation when we talk about the metrics, at least acknowledge it. And if it's being put off, then acknowledge it in writing and don't just ignore it. Because if I'm not here, nobody's going to speak up for my constituency. That is all 15 council districts.
We understood that you had a working paper assembled that lended voice to this that would then help us assemble the metrics. And as soon as that gets more public and we are directed by the body at large, we'll establish a timetable. It was not intended to ignore it or just let it go.
Great, thank you.
I would just like to echo Commissioner Funderburk's insistence upon incorporating that sense of equity and the importance of diversity, especially in our procurement process. So I would support that we do pay more attention to that in the future and not only discuss it, but have it in writing.
Other comments, other questions? Thank you very much. We'll move to 31B. I know our general manager has a particular interest in this item, so I'm glad she was able to join us. Who is presenting Energy Imbalance Market Report?
We're going to have Louis Ting come up, who's our Director of Planning and Development, and it's late in the afternoon. We're going to be very, very brief on this, but we want you to understand what Energy Imbalance Market, what is it, why it's important for LADWP to consider it, and next steps. So, Louis, with that, streamline the best that you can as you work through the few slides that you have.
Good afternoon, board members and commissioners. Brevity is key, so I'm going to really quickly explain that the California Independent System Operator, or CAISO, has embarked on this energy imbalance market since 2014. And it's a voluntary energy market that's coordinated by CAISO, and it's a real-time energy trading system where the EIM participants can procure and sell energy based on the supply and demand of the electrical grid. The EIM is available to all the electric utilities within the WEC region. So let me show you if I may, let me point to the map on the screen. That is on all the areas the WEC region has, and currently there are participants, active participants, including Pacific Corp, MV Energy, and the plan participants include Arizona Public Service, the Idaho Power, Puget Sound Energy, and Portland General Electric that are coming up in the participation. And CAISO is in the orange area on the very far on the California map on that side of it. And if I may go to the next slide, so it is a centralized. EIM is a centralized system. It's a method of resolving imbalance between generation and load. In other words, supply and demand due to, for example, force outages, variable energy resource such as integration of renewable energy, which we all have in in the state of California has increased substantially, not just for LADWP, but also for the whole entire CalISO Balancing Authority and also within WEC. And another function of EIM is that it only deals with energy. It doesn't deal with other ancillary services such as frequency, voltage controls, and other required reserves within the Balancing Authority. In addition to integrate with renewable energy, EIM will also provide a wider portfolio of generation resources through geographical diversity. So when the sun doesn't shine in one area, it shines the other, and wind doesn't blow and wind blows the other. There's some diversification and also efficient balance of generation and load or supply and demand. Just one example real quick, I'm going to show you what does that mean to integrate with the renewable energy. I'm going to go skip right to this slide. So on top is actually a load curve from LADWP. It's actually happened last week. On this, so the top chart, the red and green. The red is the actual load from the hours of 0 hour to 24 on the right-hand side. And right in the middle at 12 o'clock, if you can look at the bottom, is an actual model solar energy at year 2024 for LADWP from our IRP. And what that shows you is that that within half an hour, we potentially can have 500 megawatts of solar energy drop out of the grid. And we need to integrate that so that we can load followed, make that load very smoothly so that we can integrate with the renewable energy. And we can use the fast start gas turbines that we have and generate those power within the half an hour, or we can go to the EIM market to procure that energy more efficiently, potentially. Okay, and next slide. So what does it take to become an EIM entity? Well, obviously, we got to do a cost-benefit analysis, assess all the risks involved with this EIM market, and we have a draft report that has been conducted by a third party and also with our staff and is under review at this point, so more to come on that. And I will mention some in the final thoughts of the findings. And in order to complete the implementation process, there's going to be several agreements needs to be approved by the board and also potentially by the council for long-term contracts, is to implement the agreement, similar to an LOI, but is binding. And also there's going to be about 4 participatory agreements, and they're also binding. And the timeline of starting to finish participating in the EIM is about 18 to 24 months. Okay, that's the time frame. And obviously, we need to determine what are the resources required by the department and what resources can be entered into the market, and also what resources needed for the department, including personnel resources that are necessary in this market. Just real quickly on final thoughts. We've been charged, and so is the state, to reach the 50% of renewable energy goal by 2030. And with the EIM, joining or participating in EIM participation, it's the renewable integration is definitely one of the benefits, but also we leverage a resource diversity. And what that does is we have mutual support from all the EIM participants. So what that means is that we can leverage effectively and balance the energy supply within this market. With the preliminary finding that we do show opportunities for LADWP, there are some preliminary findings of benefit about $9 million a year by year 2024, and also annual benefits, net benefit of $7 million. So there's about an annual cost, O&M cost, about $2 million. But we are vetting through all the data, and we are also looking at years in 2020 and 19 and so forth. Okay, that's being done at this point. Participation in EIM is voluntary, and as power system resources are available. So again, those are only the resources that we deem to be available to join the EIM.
So can you just touch on that point? Once we make a commitment to participate, and it's voluntary participation.
That's correct.
What happens functionally if another entity says, "Okay, we need help now," and you're participating too? Is there any Is there anything that moves from voluntary to mandatory in terms of something we need to provide if we're engaged in the EIM?
Well, let me, if I may give
No, we self-select.
Completely.
Right.
So
Right.
someone says, we want A, B, and C, and we say, sorry, we don't have it.
And
Okay.
it's on a very short-term, real-time market.
Okay. No, that's really my key question.
I would like to mention, because the value of this is not necessarily in the potential dollar value. You are aware, since the energy crisis, that there are a variety of market models in California. There's still some smaller municipal agencies that are vertically integrated, like we are, with distribution and transmission and generation. But the state's large IOUs, they sold their generators off to third party. The ISO operates their transmission, and they basically operate wires companies. So since the crisis, particularly since LA did so well by not participating in the ISO at the time, there's been a push by all of the regulatory agencies to move LA in some way, shape, or form into the ISO. And there's a lot of these broader benefits that the analysis, I can't put my finger on because the assumption set of what happens in the Western United States is fairly broad. But these regionalization analyses have been getting tremendous traction. And there are a number of them out now, and they're going to be used as the basis to force DWP legislatively into a model that is going to be very painful given our vertical integration and given our debt load. So one strategy is to show that LA is not stiff-arming anybody. If there's a market developed that's advantageous for the region and for LA, we are right on deck in terms of participating, particularly since it is a voluntary market and we do not give over control of our equipment. This is what we told them to do prior to the development of the ISO, is create that voluntary scenario. So after this meeting today, I will go public. Since you're not taking an action, I'm going public with my support of it and plans to recommend it to the board, because I need to use that information legislatively and strategically to keep us correctly positioned. So that's the reason you're hearing about it today.
I have a suggestion, which is, in light of where we are vis-a-vis where the others are, and in light of the anticipated pressure on us legislatively, I think it would be helpful if you could arrange for a more thorough briefing of the board as to how and why we differ and what the risks are to us of these legislative
You're absolutely right. I had been asking Barbara to solicit your schedules, your time frames. Is it extra meetings? Is it starting earlier? What facilitate? And she'll collect all that, and then you can decide. But it's become far more urgent. I would note today on this related item, in the DWP reform discussions at council, a council member floated an amendment that was accepted. Now, they're only drafting language right now. They didn't sign off on it. But he floated one that he wants the full regionalization study. So I'm trying to be timely, but certainly some of the large environmental organizations see it's a big stimulus to their market if they can get DWP to participate on a more mandatory basis.
I just think we need to understand it as clearly as possible.
And we'll do that.
Yeah. Other questions or comments on this item?
Yeah, I mean, my comment, it seems self-evident, but what happens if we don't participate in this EIM?
The continued push to pull us in using other means continues. SB 350 did a lot of regionalization studies. A lot of the big enviros now have come out that said, well, if LA is forced into the market, it'll open up all this access. I just think strategically at this point, to show that we're not pushing back will get us more credibility when we point out the challenges to full regionalization for us if it's done in a rapid mechanism without thinking of the fallout. I mean, they're looking at this legislative session. And there isn't an agency out there that has the amount of debt that's vertically integrated that we do. So we have some serious conversations. I'm using this in part to show that we're on board and don't need to be forced into something too early.
Very smart.
Yep. We'll see.
Commissioners have any other questions or comments? Thank you very much. Counsel?
Yes, the board shall publicly report any action taken in closed session and the vote or abstention of every member present thereon in accordance with Section 54.957.1 of the California Government Code.
We will recess into closed session.